Need to get a drink. I'm actually like really thirsty. How's everyone doing? Back on the live stream to talk about the Haute Couture collections. This should be really fun. Before I start, did you guys have any standout Haute Couture collections of this season? Were there any collections that stood out to you specifically? Sakai. Do you know what it is? So I was actually outside. I was doing like grocery shopping, and then I just checked the time and I was like, oh damn, I need to be at home for this live stream. So like I was rushing back. So I had to rush back. So this is literally what I was wearing. So that's why. Normally I'd just be in my like usual t-shirt joggers in my living room talking about fashion. Oh, someone said Schiaparelli, Margiela and Armani were the best of a very bad bunch. I don't agree with that, but fair enough. Um, the one that stood out the most, Margiela. Robert Woon was amazing. Robert Woon was really good. Really, really good. I'm planning on talking about Robert Woon and Elia hopefully next week. Because I normally like to stream on Sundays, but I moved this week's one a lot earlier to Monday because everyone was on my neck about talking about the Margiela show. So yeah, that's kind of what happened with that one. Okay, someone's saying Givenchy. Yeah, Simone Rocha did a really good job. I don't know why, but some people didn't really like Simone Rocha's show. I don't know why though. Good evening, my fellow urban people. That's hilarious. Okay, we're gonna give it one more minute. We're gonna chat for one more minute, then we're just gonna jump straight into the Margiela show. Good evening, my fellow urban people. I love how that's now like an inside joke. Robert Moon was not inventive, but very good. Why do you think it's not inventive? I don't necessarily think, obviously, a couturier has to invent every single season, especially if, they've created their own design language. But yeah, I definitely agree. It was definitely very good. Elia was really good. I'm kind of pissed. I'm not talking about Elia in this live stream, but hey, I'm only one person. I can't talk about every single show all at once. It's not going to happen. What do you say? It's derivative and too referential. Interesting. Interesting. Oh my God, Christopher, thanks so much for the super chat. This season, John Galliano owned Couture. Yeah, I definitely agree. Some people disagree, but I 100% agree with that. But thank you so much for the super chat. I really, really appreciate that. Am I going to cover Copenhagen Fashion Week? So the issue is that because I do runway reviews the way that I do them, I can only do them at a slow pace, unfortunately, which means that I miss a lot of shows. I can't really cover every show. So if I get to Copenhagen Fashion Week, I would love to review it. But the issue is that when you review shoes in the way that I do, which is like actually talking about the shows in depth and not just being like, I like this look, that look is trash, this look is kind of nice, this look is... Everything happens really slowly because I like to talk about fashion in a considered way. And unless I'm really forcing it, that's the only way I'll be able to cover every single show and, every single runway, at every single fashion week. I mean, Copenhagen Fashion Week is a big fashion week, but Tokyo Fashion Week, for example, Shanghai Fashion Week, there's so many brands I see there that are interesting, and I'm like, oh, I'd really love to review that. But these things are very hard to do consistently. Okay, let me see if I can sort the Margiela show. Micah said he has a crush on all Schiaparelli women. You're crazy. Okay, so to jump straight into the Margiela show, let's talk about the famous Margiela Couture 2024 Spring-Summer Collection. So, as everyone knows, John Galliano is the current creative director at Maison Margiela. It's a role he's held since 2014. He's rightfully considered one of the best fashion designers of our generation. He's one of the few designers that can hang with the likes of Alexander McQueen. And he's had a very successful tenure at Maison Margiela. It's kind of weird because I feel like John Galliano has kind of flown under the radar, maybe because he's trying to keep himself under the radar after everything that has happened. But he's made so much more money for Margiela. I remember in 2019, I read a report that was saying something along the lines of John Galliano's revenues for Margiela have doubled since when he first went to Margiela in 2014. So in that 5-year span, he had started to double the revenue. And that was in 2019 when he was renewing his contract. So I wonder now in 2024 how well it's doing financially. I couldn't actually find a financial report that was more recent for Margiela, but it's quite interesting to see that even though he's under the radar, even though he's been a bit silent, financially, he's doing really well at Margiela. So that's very, very interesting. But to talk about this collection, and before I even go into like the inspirations and all those things, I genuinely feel like this collection was a rightful response to where fashion has been for a long time. I do think in a general sense, because of course, fashion can never be boring. It just depends on where you look, to be honest. There's so many designers that are more underground, less known, that are doing the more interesting stuff. And the designers that, are in the forefront, maybe. We weren't seeing very interesting things from them. Everyone is going minimal. Everyone's jumping into this quiet luxury. Everything, in a way, seems a bit stale, especially from the major luxury brands that are, at this point, taking fast fashion techniques and cutting all the corners on earth to try and improve profit margins and, reduce quality but increase price. And fashion, especially someone like me who I got into fashion because I was inspired by what I was seeing from designers like Rei Kawakubo, reading about designers like Schiaparelli, Balenciaga when I first got into fashion, really seeing the crazy dresses and techniques they used. And then fast forward to fashion now, and everything is just a bit stale, especially from the top brands. Like I said, in fashion generally, nothing can ever be stale at one point in time. It just depends where you look. But it's really good to see a major brand in Maison Margiela going this direction where, it's about the craft. It's going back to the craft. It's going back to the storytelling. It's going back to, narrative and the artfulness of fashion, other than just commerce, hoodies, sweatshirts, jeans, products, SKUs, which started to get a bit tiring in fashion, especially from the major brands, to be very honest. What people don't actually know is John Galliano is a dramatic kind of person anyway. If you look at the history of a lot of his shows, the sets are always insane, especially if we go back to the Christian Dior days. It is always dramatic. There is theatre. For people that don't know, when he was studying at Central St. Martin's, he actually worked at the National Theatre and he learned a lot, working there. And that's why he enjoys a performance. He enjoys theatre through his clothes, essentially. Now, I'll talk about what this collection especially is about. To quote John Galliano, he described this show as a walk through the underbelly of Paris. And to me, it was really just, referencing different historical times, like the 1920s and 1930s, what the people look like, but it's also showing Paris in a very different light to, how we see it. We over conceptualize ideas of what Paris is. It's this like amazing city and it's all about love, but in every city, to be honest, there is a dark side. There are people that are trying to find their identity, people trying to find their space in the city, underground communities, people that just want to dress the way they want to dress and they get judged for it. And John Galliano is basically referencing all these things and talking about all these things. So what we're going to do now is get the runway show on the screen, and then we're going to discuss through it. Let me just mute that for copyright reasons. Yeah, John Galliano has been doing the 20s forever. I mean, he's done a lot of time periods forever, to be honest. From the perspective of John, it's nothing new. So the live stream sort of opens, and the show opens with this really, really amazing gospel performance by Lucky Love. And it's very nice. You get the sort of dark sense. Everyone's wearing black. For a house of anonymity was very, I'm here launching the walk. So this is a conversation that a lot of people are having, right? This is obviously a very John Galliano show. This almost has nothing to do with Maison Margiela, if we're being very honest. This is very John Galliano. Is it okay that a designer is using, like John Galliano in this case, is using, Margiela as a way of just expressing his ideas, or does he have to, at every point in time, re-reference and pay homage to Maison Margiela's work? Is that necessary, or is he allowed to explore his own ideas with some of the collections and in some seasons? This is a conversation that people are having. You guys can tell me if you think it's okay or if you think there's an issue with that. But I don't really have any opinion on it. I just think it is what it is, type of thing. And the film that comes after the performance is called Noir, which obviously just means black. And it's directed by Baz Luhrmann, who, as everyone knows, is a very famous Australian film director. He's directed things like, The Great Gatsby. And I just love kind of how it looks. You have someone running. And then this also translates into how the show starts as well, which I really like. It literally looks like someone running away from danger or trying to take cover. You've got the wind blowing in their face. That was really, really, I love the theatre in that. What does Micah say? It should be seeped in his design, but it doesn't have to be on the nose reference all the time. Are you talking about Margiela? You're talking about John Galliano being at Margiela and if he has to reference Margiela at every turn. His appointment is clearly a way to have him still designing couture. Yeah, 100%. 100%. The only thing that bothers me is that the media doesn't give the appreciation and recognition to the Margiela team that is behind all the research making, like, at all. So the thing is that I think we kind of understand this in fashion at this point, that a creative director is never, ever responsible for every single thing that we see in a collection. It's just not possible. They have massive teams, especially at a brand as big as Margiela. There's even bigger teams if you're, a designer at a brand like Dior or something. So I think we have that understanding. I do think it is kind of nice when designers bring their whole team out. This is also something that Maison Margiela was very, very about, always talking about, it's us, not me. It's we, not I. That was what Maison Margiela was always about, right? In terms of philosophy. So I guess it would have been great in the spirit of Margiela for people to be talking about the whole team other than just John Galliano. But, fashion does what fashion does. Let me see what other comments are there while we watch this film. Okay, so this is the show starting. So essentially what this collection was also looking at is kind of looking at our rituals of dressing and the emotions that form from the way we dress. This is quite interesting because a lot of designers have referenced this before. And Martine Rose, who I talked about in a past live stream, kind of looked at this idea, but from a very different perspective. Because how John Galliano was looking at this was the emotions that we feel through the clothes that we wear. He wanted to express that on an exterior level. So he wanted to bring the emotions that we get from wearing clothes that are normally, in our interior, in our minds, actually put it front and center. And the viewers basically have to grapple with what that looks like on screen, or for the people that were at the show, they just have to look at it in person, right? And where it's actually held is it's set under a bridge, a really, really famous bridge in France. And what I do like is it's a juxtaposition between a bridge that a lot of people see and is glamorized versus what kind of goes on under the bridge, which might be darker and deeper. And it's almost uncovering, aspects of Paris that people don't like to think about, or they don't like to grapple with, or they're just blind to completely. And I like how they've created a set. You guys will see eventually through the bridge, they've made this underground kind of bar, and they've had some serious attention to detail. There are, glasses that are half filled with alcohol. There's just tatters and just things messed up everywhere, wooden stools, there's dust. It genuinely looks like the kind of club that has just been trashed by some people that have had like an insane party. That is what the place looks. It looks creepy, it looks eerie. And that was kind of what John Galliano wanted to bring about with this collection. And I also thought this might be me reaching, but when I was watching this collection the first time, something that came to mind was it's almost a commentary on how far gone fashion is, right? We've almost been imprisoned by the crazy commerce of fashion, and everything is just about sales, financial targets, and all that sort of stuff. And it's almost like, people are trapped in this club where they just can't be free. But in this kind of eerie, creepy space, this is the one place where they have the freedom to do what they want to do. The subaltern Parisian underground is something he's very good at. I agree. And a big inspiration point in this collection was Brassai, who, for people who don't know who Brassai is, he's a Hungarian-French photographer. And what he's more famously known for, and especially what John Galliano was referencing in this collection, is he has this series of pictures of photographs in Paris at night. But what makes it so revolutionary was, one, at the time he was taking these photographs, photography technology was so bare bones. It was very, very hard. Guys that work with cameras, people that, do photography know that it's very, very difficult to take pictures in low light. That's like what people are always talking about. Every time new cameras come about, one of the first things they talk about is, oh, this is so good at low light, you can increase the ISO. So you can imagine how difficult it was to capture Paris at night through photographs. And that's why it wasn't really done often, because people just didn't want to grapple with how difficult it is, to work with low light. And that also fuses into a lot of references in the collection, right? Because you have these models who are putting emotions into the way they wear clothes and showing gestures, like doing stuff like this and running in the rain, and gesturing as if to say, I'm trying to protect myself from the rain. But that also actually still factors into Brassai, because something that's really fundamental to Brassai's photography is the fact that he actually relied a lot on water for his photographs, because if you guys know, water reflects light. So when there is no light in the first place, and you're trying to, do compositions in the dark where your photography equipment is very limited, anything that can reflect light or help light or emit light in any way is something that you use a lot. And I like that kind of double reference in a way. That was really, really interesting. He gave us BBL Couture. That's crazy. That is insane. Someone said, I like how John Galliano is bringing the storytelling back. Yeah, I love it. I mean, this is nothing new for John Galliano, right? This is what John Galliano has done forever. Like, he's a storyteller. It's what he does. he's like, if you think historically of the themes of, some of his most famous collections, we think about themes like the French Revolution when he referenced the French Revolution in his graduate collection, or you think of, there's a collection, I can't remember the year, where it was about a Russian princess escaping a royal palace. He had a collection that was about, the French army conquering Nazi Germany. Um, so many of these, and I think a recurring theme in John Galliano's work is this idea of liberation, which makes a lot of sense. When you think of who John Galliano is, he's someone that, was an immigrant from a working class background in London. And there are so many worlds that he wanted to be a part of, but he just didn't feel welcome, right? Growing up. So it makes so much sense that a designer that grew up that way and thought that way when he was younger would then grow up to, care a lot about liberation, reference liberation a lot, always have themes of liberation in his work. Leo says his greatest hits. I mean, there are just ideas that are always going to be coming through in every season, like the liberation idea. Because when you look at this collection, for example, it genuinely, like I said earlier, just reminds you of people, who live in the underbelly of Paris, and people just trying to be free and trying to express themselves the way they want to express themselves, which is a theme of liberation, right? And that's something that he has done so many times historically. This person said, I saw a small clip. I'm trying to find it. Someone says it's a storyline of someone is escaping and goes through the nightlife of Paris and meets these different people and figures in Paris. Yeah, I mean, that is definitely an idea. If you guys, I didn't feel like I needed to read the show notes because, to be very honest, the show notes are long and I could just tell you where to find them. So, where you guys can actually find the show notes, this is just a little tidbit is on Show Studio's website. I normally, all the show notes of shows that I don't go to myself, I find them on Show Studio. Not saying that every single show note is on Show Studio, but 9 times out of 10, you can find them on Show Studio. And a lot of the themes in this collection are all in the show notes. Literally all of them are in the show notes. They talk about like the paintings, the references to the paintings. They talk about Versailles. They talk about what he was thinking. And there's even a section in the show notes that talks about the couture techniques that John Galliano uses, which is actually really important to know, obviously, because there's so many new techniques, especially in this collection, that he was experimenting with. And that is what haute couture is about, right? It's about craft, it's about innovation, it's about new ways of doing things through fabric, new ways of manipulating fabric. So that is actually something really important to know. But yeah, if you guys want to read the show notes, that's where you can find them. Yeah, his podcast is really interesting. The In Memory of, yeah. They haven't, it was a while ago, no? Those podcast episodes were from a while ago. What do you guys think about John Galliano bringing this very, very heavily accentuated corsetry back into fashion? Because there are so many deep discussions that people have about, men using corsets, blah, blah, blah. Because obviously, even when we talk about like Christian Dior with the new look, right? And you have people like Diana Vreeland that literally said, oh, Christian Dior, put women's liberation back by 50 years or something along those lines because he was showing corsetry. And, Diana Vreeland loved people like Coco Chanel, that she felt liberated women and gave women clothing that's more comfortable to wear and easy for women to wear and to understand. So what is the discourse around this sort of corsetry in 2024? What do people think about that? You love the corsets. Interesting, interesting. His Dior namesake label era had perfect corseting. It was never too much, it was just right. Always feminine, but never grotesque. Of course, it was back in 2022, but such a tiny waist is not going to happen. Oh, I love this question. Why does comfort have to equal freedom? I guess we'll have to ask Diana Vreeland that question. We'd have to ask her. Oh, wow. Christopher, thank you so much for the super chat. Said Martin Margiela also had a show where he sent all the models out covering their chest with their arms. The show honored Martin in so many ways. Bravo. Yeah. I remember that show. To me, I haven't read the show notes, but this to me mirrored unrealistic body standards, and also the mask-like makeup. So I liked it as storytelling. So talking about the body standards, funny enough, I think that this collection shows a genuine representation of what body positivity is, because this collection actually had a big amount of plus size models in it, and it wasn't done in a way that's very it was very naturally weaved into the collection. It wasn't done in a way where it's like, okay, look at us, we have these few plus size models in the collection. It was kind of weaved in very well into the collection. So I really like that. Deconstruction on that blazer is insane. Absolutely insane. That piece that's coming, this piece was definitely a piece that people are talking about, this look, but there's a look that's coming also because there were pieces in this collection that were inspired by the painter Kees van Dongen, and that's where you see, those paintings fused into some of the bodysuits that also have pube hair on them, which also goes into the body positivity, right? Because if you think of the time period in which John Galliano is referencing, this was a time period where, let's say, people's ideas on grooming might have been very different. And what was considered feminine back then is very different to what is considered feminine right now. So it's almost like a commentary on, who decides what is acceptable, who decides whether you're allowed to grow a bush or not. Why have the body standards changed in that regard? Why do people see that as like disgusting, even though growing pubic hair is actually a very natural thing? It occurs to everyone naturally. I really like that. And it's funny because on TikTok, people were having arguments about whether, like, why models would have their natural pubic hair, but it's artificial. It's not their actual pubic hair. ATM wearing Maison Margiela artisanal 2024 pubic hair. But yeah, this is what I also love about John Galliano's shows, and this is not just this show, this is a lot of shows that John Galliano has done, right? Is the emotion that the models walk with. Because going back to his theatre background and him always, appreciating a performance, appreciating the theatre in life and theatrical things in fashion, right? There's a performance. The models are performing, which is amazing. We always just see models walk monotonously with a straight face. Some of them don't even walk too well on a runway, and it's just same. It's really nice to see some emotion. These people look like, they've had a tough night. They've gone through, all the trappings that would happen in the underbelly of Paris, right? And they're just recovering from that, and they're walking softly because they've just had a really rough night. That is emotion. That is bringing emotion back into fashion. This is a performance. It's not just people walking in a boring manner on the runway. Watch next season, everyone will have performance shows. Oh my gosh. Unpopular opinion, but corsets do give stability and safety. I know this from a female friend. Well, I wouldn't know. I've never worn a corset. People think that this collection is going to be a move into just people trying to be performance. If you're making your collection performance heavy without any substance, then what's the point of doing it? There's no point of just doing performance for performance. The reason why the models are walking in the manner they do, and the reason why they're walking in that set that looks that way is because it's models that, like I've said, have been through the trappings of the nightlife in the underbelly of Paris. It's not just, there's no point doing it just for the sake of doing it, right? It's just a bit crazy. I also find it interesting because this look on the screen, apparently those goggles that the model was wearing was inspired by Oppenheimer, which is very interesting. This feels very in line with the 20-year rule in fashion. It feels very much like what was going on back then. Yeah, I agree. It just transports me back into, because I've watched a lot of Galliano collections, but a lot of John Galliano's best hits, right? I wasn't working in fashion. I wasn't really interested in fashion. So everything that I've learned about Galliano is about reading books, like reading the John Galliano book that Kerry Taylor wrote, or reading Gods and Kings by Dana Thomas, right? These are, or, going back and saying, oh, learning about Galliano's shows and watching them back. This literally transported me back into that time. Because once again, I never lived through, well, I lived through a lot of the shows, but I wasn't in fashion. So I don't remember it. I don't know what was going on around it. I don't know what conversations people are having when this show is happening, right? I have none of the real context other than knowing what the show's about, knowing the inspiration points and reading about it in books, right? And in articles and watching the shows. So it's good to actually be around when something like this is happening. Someone said the final looks in blue. They're giving dolls. They are actually supposed to be dolls. Like I said, I don't want to, because the problem with why I'm talking about more of the narrative in the show rather than just inspiration is because, to be very honest with you, all the inspiration points are very clearly written in the show notes. So I don't just want to regurgitate what the show notes say, because then what is the point of that? But in the show notes, if you read it, they literally talk about Pat McGrath's makeup, and they talk about this reference. These looks actually referencing dolls, and even like the stripes are to reference the kind of dolls that you would normally see. And even, 1 second, let me get it up. Let me get my notes. I don't know why my internet just stopped working. I hope I haven't gone off the stream. I tried to open the show notes and everything just froze. Can you guys hear me? Let me know if you can hear me. Okay, perfect. You can hear me. So yeah, in the show notes, they talk about how these dolls are inspired by the relationship that's formed between artists and their anatomical lay dolls. And so that's why you have these looks with the striped shirted dresses, and you also have tweed skirt suits that are shrunk to coquettish expressions with the shoulder line. So that is literally what it says in the show notes. So that's why I don't really enjoy just regurgitating what show notes say because there's no extra context other than just go and read the show notes. But yeah, that's the reference. It's interesting how it's maximalism in a very different way to how we've seen maximalism recently. That's very interesting because I think when we consider maximalism these days, we more consider it through the lens of color, just a lot of color. Because every time I think maximalism, the first thing that comes to my head is Alessandro Michele and Gucci, right? We don't think of maximalism in the sense of, just excess from a theme standpoint, which is what John Galliano is known for, just being very excessive, right? Exactly. Like you said, patterns and logos, exactly. The actual point of couture shows is crossover marketing, not for securing more couture customers. Success of the show on SMS should be the rule, not the succession. Yeah, I mean, this is something that I talk about even like on Patreon when I do my Patreon book club, right? Because even in a lot of books like How Luxury Lost Its Luster, so many other books about luxury fashion and just articles, and everyone about luxury fashion knows this, right? Is that haute couture shows don't make the lion's share of money for brands, right? They just don't. What makes the lion's share is ready to wear, but more so things like perfume and other cosmetics and accessories, bags, footwear, belts, earrings, other jewelry, that kind of stuff. So couture shows are really just a marketing tool for brands to sell more accessories and ready to wear. What does Margiela sell? Tabby boots, bags. That's what Margiela sells the most. So, and even in this collection, right? Something that we'll look at when we look at the looks in like more detail. There were a lot of tabby boots in this collection, so many different types of tabby boots, right? So even though it's a couture collection and it's very conceptual, we still get, the commerce in it, and there's still an understanding that, okay, we sell tabby boots, so we need to every season have, different iterations and colors and fabrics of tabby boots. Ain't no corny newspaper print in the show, thank God. That's probably the worst Gallianoism. I like the newspaper print. I like the newspaper print. I like that. I like that. Haven't seen anyone draw parallels between the dolls and the Martin Margiela marionette collection. So actually, a lot of journalists did do that. I think Alexander Fury even mentioned it. So yeah, there were some people that have pointed it out, to be honest. But I do remember Alexander Fury specifically pointing that out. And Alexander Fury is like a John Galliano like stan. He collects John Galliano's clothes. He's the one. If you want to talk about John Galliano, Alexander Fury is literally the person. When the newspaper print came back a few years ago via fast fashion, I gagged as if it had become more hideous. Yolo said, fair, I'm looking in the wrong places. Not really. I mean, so many people posted about the collection, so it's understandable that, everything can just get lost in translation. Yeah, so it's just it's what happens. The Maison Margiela has some similar to the M6 products, so probably will have a profit increase. Yeah, I mean, Margiela does well financially ultimately, so at the end of the day, we shall see how, the tabby boots in this collection sell. I think this collection really, what it serves as is one, to show us that John Galliano can still do these kind of things. Two, it's a good marketing, opportunity for Margiela as a whole, because now this season, everyone is talking about Margiela. So because everyone is talking about Margiela, Margiela's more in our minds, which means it could lead to a lot of people when they have money to spend being like, oh, let me buy the Margiela piece, really. And if you look at the marketing budgets for these brands, they are so massive that literally just a small runway show in Paris is literally just part of their marketing spend. That's literally how they see it. But yeah, I thought I'd go through the show again because there's so many other, things that are happening. Even down to like this idea of, these underground underbelly Parisians who look like they've just been in a fight. They're fugitives from fights, and some of them look half dressed, like they just finished a sexual encounter. Some of them are clutching their clothes. It's very, very interesting, and it's also because when you look at the collections, and they said this in the show note too, that it's things are being deconstructed top down. So things are in tatters from the top down. And that also shows kind of like it's a reference to when people imitate imagery, the fact that you can never really imitate something and have the same emotion and imbue the same understanding as the thing that you're copying. So even though on the surface, you might copy another photographer's work, and in this specific case, John Galliano is referencing Versailles, it's never the same. Because when a photographer does the original work, there's an emotion that they're doing it. There are reasons why they're taking a photo. There's something they're trying to achieve. And when you're copying that thing or you're trying to imitate it, you're copying it on face value without any of the context, right? So Joe Galliano wanted to use clothes as a way of showing that you can never really imitate the original, and there's always something that goes wrong when you try to do that. And he showed that through, a lot of the distressing that we see in the clothing and certain pieces being in tatters. Wait, someone said, in a world where you have OnlyFans and twerk on TikTok, you have people getting offended by a woman's nudity. Did anyone get offended by a woman's nudity? I didn't know people were offended by the show. I mean, nudity is very, very, very common in fashion. It's nothing new, to be honest. I also like something that John Galliano did in this collection where he was playing with the colors. So he wanted, clothes. That's why you have this kind of like brown tinge to a lot of clothes. He wanted clothes to kind of look moon faded, as it's described in the show notes, or like sun bleached, tobacco stained. And that's kind of a reference to obviously like in the night, your clothes actually interacting with nature and the outside, and kind of you just going through everyday life, right? It's an understanding of these people that actually live with their clothes and the emotions that is connected to the clothing. So it's not perfection. And that's something also that is very John Galliano. John Galliano does not really like perfection. John Galliano is one of those designers, when they talk about, seeing beauty in imperfections, that is literally John Galliano to a T. There's always an understanding of something doesn't have to be pristine for it to be perfect. Something can actually be perfect while also having imperfections simultaneously. And that is something that, and it's a theme that is very common in a lot of John Galliano's work, and it's something that I enjoyed that he brought to this collection. Live in California, and people are buying and wearing Margiela, all ages. Those 4 missing tag darts on glasses, coats, sweaters, and bags hit different in the wild. Even this collection, like, is a direct reference to that Margiela show. Sorry, that look. Sorry, I said that collection. That look is a direct reference. Yeah, it says in that sense, it's very impressionism. Yeah, yeah. Where are they wearing the Christian Louboutin shoes? Yeah, because I told everyone to go read the show notes, right? So there was a collaboration with Christian Louboutin in this collection. There are not too many. There's a few of the shoes that are a collaboration with Christian Louboutin. I'll see if I can point them out if I get any like more detailed shots. And so a lot of people are commenting on the nudity without an understanding of Margiela. That's so interesting. I honestly didn't see any commentary about the nudity, to be honest. I did not see any commentary about that anywhere. Where were people having this conversation on TikTok? Like nudity is so common in fashion. Like that is not shocking at all. Like at all. You can find the show notes on Show Studio's website. So if you go on Show Studio's website, you'll be able to see all the details, all the techniques that John Galliano used, all the ideas in the collection, the inspiration points, whether you're talking about the Kees van Dongen paintings on the bodysuits, or you're talking about precise photography. It's all in the show notes, literally. We're all about making fashion a democracy. That is something I do like about Show Studio, because I remember a while ago, it's very hard to get a hold of the show notes. And I don't know why brands till now still gatekeep their show notes when people just want to understand the clothes better. And it's not everyone that can make it to the show for many different reasons. Some people are not invited. Some people just don't work in fashion. Some people just don't want to go to the show. They've got like kids and other things to do rather than just go to Paris and watch runway shows. So I've always found it weird that, brands gatekeep their own show notes. So I love that Show Studio posts them. Some brands have started posting them, but it's great. And it's also good that John Galliano's show notes are useful, because a lot of show notes, and I kind of, make jokes about this all the time, but there's so many show notes where you can't deduce anything because it's just a bunch of just like dribble on paper. It's just, for this collection, we wanted to imbue the emotion about the coming and going, about the left and right, about the up and down, about the forwards and backwards, about what you do at the night, but what you do in the day, about the emotion of the future, but also the reverence of the past. And it's just like, why? Why did you bother making show notes? We want to know about the techniques. We want to know about the fabrics. We want to know what your inspiration points are. We don't want to hear any of that dribble drabble. So it's funny you mentioned Rick Owens. Rick Owens doesn't gatekeep his show notes. So Rick Owens even puts his show notes in the YouTube descriptions when he has those videos on YouTube, right? So that's something I also like about Rick Owens. Dribble drabble. It's like the words don't mean anything. It's like a toddler just scribbled words on a piece of paper, and then there's just like, yeah, here are the show notes. Also, that neck piece, this is also something that I wanted to mention that is very interesting, because this is obviously not in the show notes. But that neck piece is actually a very interesting piece because it was made by Robert Mercier, who is a very, very famous leather haute couture craftsman. He's made so many things over the years. I first found out about his work because he made those leather feathers for Ange Willemista. And because I'm an Ange Willemista stan, I started reading about his work. And since then, I've kind of, followed what he's done. And he's made a lot of pieces for like Loewe, a lot of those like optical illusion. Oh, you thought it was cotton, but it's actually leather. He's behind the design and construction of a lot of those things from a lot of brands that you see. So he is amazing with leather. And they're supposed to look like porcelain, those neck pieces, but they're actually, just leather. So that was kind of interesting. But also what's really interesting about it is neck pieces in general, or just chokers, they're kind of tied to BDSM, and they have ties to liberation, and they have ties to, people being free. And it's quite interesting, and it fits in a collection that has these themes to have those neck pieces there. So that's something that actually stood out to me to mention. So yeah. This is a lot of nudity. Yeah, I'm going to get demonetized. I've already accepted that this video is never going to be monetized. YouTube's going to be like, hell no. We are going to, because if you guys don't know, when there's nudity in a YouTube video or live stream or whatever, YouTube actually limits who sees it, not just by age, by like region too. So it just gets banned from like loads of different countries. So it's only shown in like YouTube, US, and maybe France and UK and Germany and stuff. It's really weird. I feel like we needed this kind of collection. We need to dream, and Galliano lets us dream while everyone is doing simple things without a context. We need more drama and theatre. Yeah, I agree. I think one reason why I really agree with that is because it's just good to have different things going on in fashion simultaneously. So that's why I always like when people have their own aesthetics, people look really different. Because if everything becomes the same, it's kind of like the Gucci effect. If everyone wants to be minimal, then all of fashion becomes the same, and then every single brand is competing with itself. Where's the fun in that? So it's really good to see, you know, different designers doing different things in interesting ways. Ethan said the man in the corset went off. I didn't know that was possible. Yeah, I mean, Robert Messier is crazy. Like his work is insane. When this show is over, I'm going to like show his Instagram page because he has a lot of the stuff that he worked on for the Margiela show on the Instagram page. Also, just to mention other people that worked on the show that did amazing things. We're going to talk about what Pat McGrath did, but Pat McGrath did this kind of wax makeup, especially on the doll looks, to sort of add to the doll effect, right? And she kind of pulled off this realistic glass makeup look that was really, really interesting. It's almost like latex painted on top of the skin. So that was an amazing touch from Pat McGrath, one of the best like makeup artists in fashion right now. You have people like Stephen Jones, who I'm a big fan of. Stephen Jones, I've interviewed him on my channel actually. He's a milliner. For guys that don't know, Stephen Jones is like one of the most famous milliners in fashion right now. He works with absolutely everyone on their headpieces. Historically, he's worked with so many people as well. John Galliano, Alexander McQueen, like the list goes on. Loewe, like he works with Dior too. He works with everyone. So Stephen Jones made a lot of the headpieces in this collection, which are really, really amazing. That's always good to see. This is such a nuts live stream lineup, not gonna lie. Man's telling me after this show we're moving on to Schiaparelli, then Paul Gaultier, Simone Rocha. Hey, what can I say? It's not me, it's designers, you know, showing really interesting shows. These shows made me so excited about fashion. It's actually insane. It's so insane. I haven't been this excited to talk about fashion in a long time, to be honest. Regarding the need to dream, putting tens of millions of marketing down, I was reminded today of the higher short films for BMW. I think having this dramatic and cinematic marketing strategy. Interesting. Christopher says, I used to just put glue on my hand and let it dry when I was a kid. It gave the same effect. I love that. I think probably the reason why they can't use glue is health and safety reasons. Imagine they put glue on the models' faces, and then when it comes time to remove the glue, it just doesn't come off. It's crazy. For someone who thinks there's too much nudity in this fashion show, please do not go to an art gallery. They give you cardiac arrest. I also think this show was a huge show up or shut up for the other couture houses because honestly, every other show is just boring by default in comparison. I need full set design storytelling. Oh my God. A show I thought was really boring. And once again, I really hate talking about fashion in simplistic terms, like, oh my God, the show's boring. But Chanel's Haute Couture show was obviously inspired by ballet. And ballet is an inspiration point that so many designers use. I mean, John Galliano has been referenced ballet in one of his past collections. I remember, I think it was Fall Winter 2011, Galliano's show, where Rudolph, one of Galliano's favorite ballet dancers, I remember the show. I think John Galliano was talking about how he admires everything about Rudolph, from the way he dances to his costumes. And I remember that show had loads of Russian themes, from the hats to the set. Even going back to John Galliano in theatre, I remember in that show, if you watch it, there are these like models who are like shivering, and they look like they're shivering, and their makeup, they had white powder on their face, and it looked like, you know, when you've been in cold weather and people's skin goes pale, that is what that collection was. It felt like watching it. So something like ballet, something that everyone references in fashion. Ballet and fashion like go hand in hand. I mean, my favorite brand, Art Mista. I remember when Sebastian Munier referenced Nijinsky for one of his collections, right? So it's something that everyone references. I mean, Rei Kawakubo, what's that collection? Is it Spring Summer 2005, where it was talking about women's empowerment and power, where there was like these biker looks with ballet, and she was talking about, you know, the fact that women can be many different things. So she wanted to imbue feminine strength through bright biker looks, but then also these ballet core ideas with the ballerina shoes, the lot of tulle used in the garments. And then also, I think the models in that collection had the wigs that you would see from a judge in court, to also imbue that women also have intelligence. And she was just talking about the layers of women, right? So the reason why I'm mentioning all these shows that I just remember off the top of my head is there are many interesting ways to reference, you know, ballet and stuff like that. But I think that Chanel's Haute Couture collection was the most boring, vapid way of referencing ballet I've ever seen. It was so bad. It was so bad. Like, I've seen hundreds, because like I've said, ballet is so over-referenced in fashion, hundreds of better iterations of understandings through a runway show when it comes to ballet and those ideas. It was so bad. Also, but ballet is not a very good theme to use because Miu Miu Ballet Flat was recent and everyone will compare. Yeah, Miu Miu literally single-handedly brought back the whole ballet core thing, right? The whole ballet core aesthetic. What was it? The Fall Winter 2022 Miu Miu collection. That was what had everyone in a chokehold. There's a true Tim Burton vibe in the show, in my opinion. I'm French, but correct me if I'm wrong. We can tell it is made by an English designer. No, like there's a true English aesthetic. Does it have to be French? Does the collection have to be inherently French, though? I don't have the answers. I don't have the answers. This is a good point. I love the fact that he was inspired also by his old mannequin that was shown in the interview for Vogue. But yeah, going back to that question, does it have to be quintessentially French though? I mean, even Maison Margiela, okay, yes, cool. The brand is based in, you know, Paris now, but Maison is not French. So Maison is Belgian, right? So does it have to be quintessentially French? I don't know. And if you think of Belgium also, it's quite funny because obviously they learn in Antwerp and that's why they went to school. And if you think of Antwerp, it's part of the Flanders region of Belgium. So that is even more away from France. It's not in the French-speaking part of Belgium, right? Solo Boy said 2% ballet, 98% boring clothes. Are you talking about Chanel? I try to be, because once again, I don't like talking about fashion in simplistic terms. And also, I don't know if it's worth my time actually, spending a long period just talking about a Chanel show, which I really didn't like. But yeah, that's what I said is what I said. Yeah, Coco Chanel did have a very long history of supporting the Ballet Rue. There are many people on TikTok talking about nudity and objectification of women and their use in this industry. This generation does not know how to enjoy anything without dogmatizing everything. I think it's all about context, right? Because like nudity is common in fashion. I mean, if you think of the themes of this collection, part of it was, this idea that these characters in the underbelly of Paris have come from a sex encounter, or some of them have been in a fight, so their clothes are in tatters and things like that. So if you're having inspiration points, it makes sense why there would be nudity. It's all about context, right? And in fashion, nudity happens all the time, unless we're going to say that nudity is a bad thing. Every single time there's nudity in fashion, we'll probably run out of saliva saying that. So yeah, I just think that's a bit weird. It's really weird. It's really, really strange when people talk about these things. I don't know. It's odd. It's very, very odd. Someone said, sensitive ass generation. Oh my God. Oh my God. There's a video that I saw online of people showcasing how they made the pubic hair for this collection. I couldn't find it, so I just found this tweet on Twitter that obviously talks about the artificial pubes, basically. But I do think that it's a very, very interesting commentary on body positivity and just, why is it that we shame things that occur naturally? So there are many things that occur naturally for women, like people grow pubic hair, but women get shamed for having pubic hair, or like armpit hair, for example. If a woman has armpit hair, people are like, oh my God, she's this, she's that. And it's like, mate, it's literally natural to grow armpit hair. If you decide that you want to go out of your way to shave it, then you do you. But that is literally how we occur naturally. But for some strange reason, a lot of these things are like frowned upon. So I really love that. People in the comments are talking about how sensitive our generation is. I'm going to see if I can find Robert Mercier's Instagram page so I can put that on the screen. So yeah, this is his Instagram page. I'm sure he has some of the sculptures that he's done. These are some of the Margiela looks. A lot of the pieces that he made. Very, very interesting how he had these porcelain things that are actually leather. Just absolutely insane. It literally, like, if I didn't know it was leather, I wouldn't think it was leather. And because I know who he is and I know what he worked on, I would genuinely think that is porcelain. But you can kind of see behind. It's so insane. The craftsmanship is wild. It's wild. It would be very interesting to see if Galliano can keep his alter ego of the 90s at bay. I mean, a good example of seeing how John Galliano kind of self-destructed is if you watch the Kingdom of Dreams series. It's like a 4-episode series that's based on the book How Luxury Lost Its Luster. And they basically just talk about how luxury fashion got to where it is, essentially. And there's a focus on the work of John Galliano, Alexander McQueen, and Marc Jacobs in particular, those 3 designers, and where they fit in the whole LVMH Kering luxury fashion sort of understanding of where fashion is now. And you can see that John Galliano, of course, he was at Givenchy, then he went to Dior. And when he was at Dior, as he started to get more and more praise, he started to be a bit more and more full of himself, to the point where he almost had a god complex. Even the way he was talking, his mannerisms, he had a god complex, and it all just imploded into, obviously, what happened. And it's quite crazy to see that the pressure of running a brand of that level makes every designer self-destruct. I mean, Alexander McQueen unfortunately passed. You have people like Marc Jacobs that was checked into rehab. John Galliano self-destructed. It's quite insane at the pace of fashion and how that affects a lot of the designers of this era. It's kind of insane, and it's sad to see. That's why something I really loved about this collection, I remember reading somewhere that they said John Galliano has been designing this collection for more than 8 months. And I absolutely love that, because I'm a big proponent of the fact that fashion needs to slow down. And when you actually give really good designers time to design, time to think about, their concepts in their work, this is the kind of collection you get. When you have designers that have to make a collection every two months, and then they're making capsule collections and collaboration collections, that's why you get boring drab. That's why it's just, terribly fitting off the rack tailoring that we just see everywhere from every brand, and a lot of the clothes seem very uninspired. It's because maybe some of the designers, maybe it's them, but I think it's also to do with how fast-paced fashion is, and the fact that these designers don't really even have enough time to really sit down with their thoughts and expand their concepts further than just on the surface level, because that's really all they have time for, which is really sad. I just want to go through these other Margiela bits, because this is so interesting. This like porcelain effect leather is so interesting. So my graduation collection is being made and idealized in 1.5 years. Uh, 6 months for 60 looks and minor collections. Yeah, it is crazy. It is crazy. It's very crazy. But yeah, just amazing craftsmanship across the collection. I mean, I didn't talk about the techniques, but like I said, I'm not going to, because what I could do is just regurgitate the show notes, which I'm not going to do. I've just told you guys where you can find the show notes, and you guys can, read it for yourselves. But insane craftsmanship, and that is really what Haute Couture is about. It's just that this collection was really a blending of the craftsmanship with, the storytelling. Everything was taken care of, attention to detail, down to the makeup looks, the set, the wooden stools, the dusty environment. It looks gritty, it looks grungy, it looks eerie. It's so good. Is Margiela under LVMH? No, it's OTB. Renzo owns it. Only the brave. I'm going to see if I can get Pat McGrath's Instagram up so we can look into these really interesting makeup looks. So yeah, these are the models peeling off the makeup. It's so interesting how it just peels off so easily and seamlessly. Imagine if it was actually glue. Because I saw some speculation on TikTok where people are saying it's glue, and I'm like, that is not safe. That is not safe for the models at all. We need an article about how Renzo is daring enough to do things that LVMH won't. I think because, well, Renzo is obviously a businessman, right? But I mean, if you think about the brands, well, let me not say all, but some of the brands under OTB, they're never going to be a Dior or a Chanel. They're not luxury in the sense of like old Parisian luxury, right? So there's more scope for Margiela to be creative under an OTB. If Margiela was under LVMH, they would have absolutely rinsed all the commercial aspects of Margiela. They would have over commercialized it. I mean, Margiela is even over commercialized now, right? Because if you think of Martin Margiela's ideas, you think of the fact that he wanted to stitch, two white threads or sometimes four white threads as kind of like this understated logo because he didn't like the idea of logos. And then what do Margiela do now? They literally put the four stitches on on t-shirts. So you're basically taking an idea of a philosophy of Margiela, which is not about branding and those things, and putting it front and center, which is the most un-Margiela thing to do, right? So I feel like if LVMH owned Margiela, they would over commercialize things like that. They would just find every single aspect of Margiela and just destroy it. Just destroy the essence of what Margiela is completely and just make it commercial. So in a lot of ways, it's really great that LVMH don't own Margiela. Exactly, the number sweaters, the fact that the number system is now on rings, the Margiela number system is on rings. They print the numbering system on t-shirts. Like, it's so un-Margiela in terms of philosophy, but I guess we're in this commercial world, right? So we can do that. What people don't understand is that the purpose of haute couture is to create something unique, true luxury that cannot be imitated and takes time and dedication. Yeah, I totally agree. It is, and that's why I'm really happy that, okay, yes, I know a lot of people are talking about the craft. Sorry, a lot of people are talking about the narrative and just the emotion that John Galliano was able to, present through the show. But we also need to talk about the craft because there was a lot of craft that went into the collection and a lot of playing with new techniques. I really appreciate that Renzo understood what Galliano wants to do and allowed him time to develop it. Yeah, I'm really happy about it. A lot of time too. I really hope fashion gets slow. I think if fashion slows down again, we will literally get fashion on this level. If LVMH owned Margiela, Margiela will come in public and show his face to be against Margiela. if 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 LVMH bastardize Maison Margiela to the point where Martin himself has to come out and show his face just to be like, I don't accept this at all. That's insane. That is something that I do love about the Belgian designers, though. They are such purists. I mean, if you think of Margiela, like Margiela was such a good designer that when Margiela went to intern for Jean-Paul Gaultier told him, "You're too skilled to be my intern." That is how good Margiela was. But Margiela insisted on learning because Margiela accepted the fact that, okay, I might be a good designer, but I also don't know how to run a brand. I don't know about the business side. I don't know about all these different things, right? I don't know how a brand actually works. I just know how to design clothes. I don't know what kind of people you need on your team, all that sort of stuff. So imagine a designer being that good and still being that humble. Can you imagine if a designer in our time like has half the skill of like a McQueen or a Margiela? Their ego is going to be through the roof. They're never going to be that humble ever. It's just not going to happen. Not in this social media era. No way. So I said Poirot would never. Yeah, very humble. He wanted to learn. He did want to learn, despite being just so good. And of course, like Margiela, this is not a Margiela history live stream, right? But Margiela learnt from so many other people too. I mean, Margiela talks about his friendship with like people like Marina Yee, and you know how much he learned, you know, being around Marina Yee from a design aspect, and a lot of the way that Marina Yee designs and Margiela, there are like crossovers there, right? Is it harder or easier talking to camera when you have no co-hosts? It's kind of it's kind of hard because I'm trying to put things on the screen and talk at the same time, and I'm like multitasking, and it's really hard to do that. It is actually very hard. When I have co-hosts, I use that as a chance to change what's on the screen and play around with what people are looking at visually, because I always think, how can I make these live streams interesting? I don't just want to be chatting all the time. I want people to see interesting things on the screen constantly, right? So that's why it's a lot harder without my co-hosts. Unless you want to jump onto the live. He said it's bedtime. I need a technician to do the visuals. I know, I know. We don't make that kind of money on this channel. Hopefully one day we make that kind of money. But for now, we don't have technician money. So for now, it's just going to be moments of while I fix a lot of bits in the collection and I'm moving things on the screen, and then me talking. Yeah, Leo, you can jump in. I love Leo because Leo is very opinionated. So I feel like Leo would have very interesting takes on the lives. My hair looks a mess, or else I'd join. Fair enough. Let's see if I can get some of the Instagram bits of the Margiela show. It's crazy how I've been talking for 1.5 hours. It doesn't feel like that. And we've only gone through one show. My gosh. My actual gosh. They even have a part of the show notes in the IG description where it says, the ritual of dressing is a composition of the self. With the body as our canvas, we build an exterior expressive of the interior, a form of emotion. And that is all in the show. That's literally in the show notes. It's literally there. This show was a definite checkpoint. It 100% was. It 100% was. Yeah, editing after the live will be an absolute disaster. Like yeah. I don't even know how I'm going to do it, but yeah. But yeah, anyway, I guess we've kind of talked about everything in the show. If you guys have any last thoughts on this collection, and then we're going to move on to the Schiaparelli Haute Couture collection. Any final thoughts? What are you guys' final thoughts on the collection? Like genuinely, some of these men operate like the Olympians. Looking forward to future shows. The next shows are going to be such spectacle hogs. Scapper who? Venus says loves the corsets. Replica couture runway EDP coming soon. Oh my god. Oh my, that would be amazing. That would be amazing. Oh my. For guys that don't know, obviously Margiela has a really successful perfume line that makes a lot of money, and each of the perfumes are themed around a feeling and just like being around a space. So Jazz Club is supposed to smell like a jazz club by the fireplace. It's supposed to smell like you are actually by the fireplace. You know, under the lemon trees, you're supposed to smell like under a lemon tree, right? So imagine they actually made a perfume. They made a perfume that was Couture Runway EDP, which is supposed to smell like what it smells like at Couture Runway. Imagine it smells like BO. Like Margiela basically saying that everyone that goes to couture shows smells. Obviously, that's not going to happen. I'm just joking. Smells like porcelain makeup. What I'm going to do before we go into the next show is I found this TikTok of someone showing how Pat McGrath was able to make those, you know, doll-like makeup looks. So let me just put it on the screen. Hopefully you guys can hear it. Might have to refresh the page, it's not loading.
Pat McGrath basically said glass skin is going nowhere, and she did it by using this product. Here's how. Pat McGrath is a makeup artist known for dominating our fashion market. And at Maison Margiela's couture show last night, she turned models into porcelain dolls. Liquid Glass by Cryolan is a makeup product that is used like latex painted on top of the skin. You can see in this video that the finish is so smooth and glossy. It's also really easy to just peel straight off. That's how the glass skin look at Maison Margiela's show was achieved. What did you think of Pat McGrath's glass skin at Maison Margiela's couture show last night? Let me know in the comments and follow for more content like this.
The British Wi-Fi. Do you know what it is? So my Wi-Fi is just very specifically terrible because I live near a river. So my signal's forever going to be bad. I don't even use my Wi-Fi is so slow that I can't stream with my Wi-Fi because it just won't work. So I have to use my phone as a hotspot for my laptop. So I'm literally live streaming with hotspot internet. That is like, this is where we are, guys. It's not glamorous. These things are not as glamorous as they look. Because so it wasn't glue. Yeah, it certainly was not glue. It certainly was not glue. Damn, you said the stream messing with the stream. I'm stuck with Spectrum and they suck. I feel your pain. Yeah. But anyway, amazing show by John Galliano. Hopefully there's more to come, and hopefully we get this artfulness in fashion back in fashion, and we need to do away with the vapid, boring, minimalistic for no reason other than just to jump into the quiet luxury trend fashion. So yeah, next we're going to talk about the Schiaparelli Haute Couture show. As everyone knows, at least my audience does, the current creative director at Schiaparelli is Daniel Roseberry. This is a role that he's held at Schiaparelli since 2019, I think. And Daniel Roseberry is very important in fashion because he is one of the only designers who has been able to successfully usher Schiaparelli into a new generation. They tried many times to revive Schiaparelli's brand, all to no avail, and Daniel Roseberry finally successfully ushered Schiaparelli into the modern world, you know, with different looks like on Kim Kardashian and using different celebrities to kind of bring it back into relevance. So Daniel Roseberry, I think, has done a very good job introducing Schiaparelli to a new audience. I think that a lot of his early haute couture shows were very on the nose with the references. It was almost like surrealism overload, which, okay, yeah, Salvador Dali, surrealism is a big aspect of what Elsa Schiaparelli does, but there are so many other aspects to Elsa Schiaparelli's work. And I think we saw a lot of those aspects in the latest haute couture collection, which I found very amazing and refreshing, because I think that it's a very hard job that Daniel Roseberry has to do. And it's like, what do you do? Most people didn't know what Schiaparelli was. So you kind of have to be very obvious in the way that you reference the brand while you're reintroducing a new audience to Schiaparelli. And then as time progresses and as more people understand what the brand is, they learn about the history of Elsa Schiaparelli, then you can then move into the deeper references, which is what I think happened with this couture collection. Does anyone in real life buy Schiaparelli? Well, I don't know, because Schiaparelli is so damn expensive. It's just way past my tax bracket. So I don't actually see, I see people online wearing Schiaparelli. I don't really see a lot of Schiaparelli in person, but once again, I'm not friends with billionaires. So maybe if I was, then it would be a different story. But also, talking about on the nose references though, look one in this show is literally a reference to that really famous portrait of Elsa Schiaparelli. Like, you guys would know the exact portrait I'm talking about. It's a direct reference. But what I really liked was this collection was about the dichotomy between old traditions and new traditions and techniques, right? So something that Daniel Roseberry was talking about in this collection is, you know, the fact that we kind of live in this like online world and technology moves really fast, and we'll get to that. And another aspect in this collection was talking about the fact that Elsa Schiaparelli's uncle, Giovanni Schiaparelli, studied the surface of Mars, and he's known for, you know, doing a lot of research on Mars. And apparently, I don't know, I need to fact check this, says it in the show notes, that he coined the term Martian. I don't know if that's true. I actually need to cross-check that. That just seems like something that should definitely be cross-checked. But he's definitely a big reason as to why we have such a fascination with everything space, because he did such important research when it comes to Mars, right? So, of course, looking at space, something that's like a space age collection, looking at, you know, futuristic designs is a very Elsa Schiaparelli thing to do. If you just look at who her uncle was, the fact that she had a lot of, growing up, she had a lot of access to a lot of these like really old artifacts and stuff like that. So that's why, for example, on the screen, you get things like the robot baby, because that's a reference to just where technology is going. But let me have my standard reach about this robot baby look. So this robot baby look is actually an inspiration to Ripley, who's a character in the Alien series. In an interview, he talked about how he's watched the Alien series 6 times. But what I found really interesting about this, other than the fact, which is obvious, that, you know, Ripley had an alien child and then you have a model holding like a robot baby, is also the fact that I saw it as a commentary on where, you know, kids are going or what kids look like, right? Because technology is so part of our everyday lives that in a way, kids that are growing up today are kind of in part baby, part robot, or part technology. Because I remember reading studies recently, and you guys might have seen like all these different TikToks where they're talking about how children these days perform worse in school. And it's to do with like they're always online, they're always on social media, they're always on a screen. And so they lack social skills and it's affecting their academic performance. So I thought that was just a very, very interesting thing that I thought about. Yeah, the baby didn't look like that, but the baby was an alien baby. And like, we don't know ultimately what aliens look like. So any interpretation that looks different to a human can be a reference to an alien baby. Schiaparelli's take on iPad kids. But yeah, there were also other understand like we just saw the motherboard microchip dress, and that was full of encrusted microchips and motherboards and technology artifacts pre 2007, which is just a commentary on how fast technology moves. And actually, Daniel Roseberry was talking about how it's quite shocking that a lot of these things are really hard to find. He even said, to quote him, that the technology pre 2007 is as hard to find as certain vintage fabrics and embellishments, which is insane. Just to show you how fast like technology moves, and then we just discard everything from the past that is so hard to even source. So that was very, very, very interesting. Low-key kid as an accessory is a more pertinent statement. A kid as an accessory. Oh no, you guys are bringing the Megan Thee Stallion beef. No, no. I'm not gonna talk about that. I'm not gonna talk about that. Another inspiration point, by the way, in this collection were a lot of Western inspired themes. So on the screen now you can see these like big buckles that are very Western inspired. Obviously, Daniel Roseberry is from Texas. So the Western inspired looks were a reference to him. That's why you see the cowboy boots. But it's not a very obvious Western inspired. So yes, there were the cowboy sort of understandings of a Western aesthetic in the collection. But he also said he also wanted to imbue this sort of like bikers aesthetic also. So it's like two of them fused together. It's not just Western through the lens of being a cowboy and that sort of like cliche Texas thing, even though there were quite a few of those cliches. Like when you see the piece that had the silk satin dressage knots with the horsehair at the back and all those kind of things. The baby can also mean how we give more attention to technology than to human relationships, more time on the phone than to children. That's a good analysis. A very good analysis. To think he could have been an advisor to LV. And also, I thought so. Okay, that's another one of those references to the dressage knots. There were a lot of pieces. This look was a reference to Elsa Schiaparelli's skeleton dress, obviously the really famous Schiaparelli skeleton dress. But it was also, he said it was a reference to the Alien movie, because the aliens in the Alien movie have a really pronounced exoskeleton. So that was kind of interesting. And also the fabric looks like straw or like hay, which you would more associate with, horses, cowboys, dressage. So he's used it in that fabric, even though he's referencing Elsa Schiaparelli's skeleton dress. Interesting way of doing things. Cowboy Roseberry. What did Leo say? His clothes rely so much on embroidery and adornment, and that's why they fail so hard. I don't think they fail so hard. I think it's just, it has to be quintessentially very heavily embroidered, and because that's what Elsa Schiaparelli used to do, unless he can find creative ways of, doing different things. So something I will say about this collection, by the way, is a critique I always had when it came to Daniel Roseberry Schiaparelli, which I like for the most part, is that I'd like to see him present different understandings of Elsa Schiaparelli's work other than surrealism. So something I always talk about is the fact that, Elsa Schiaparelli used plastic zips when using plastic zips on as an outer adornment on a dress was like a no-go. It was like completely shocking to do back when she did it, right? And that's kind of what she used to do. She used to use really weird materials and fabrics as outer adornments for her garments. So most times when Schiaparelli had a zip, they would kind of be hidden. So when you see zips that are really obvious in plastic, it's because she's actually using the zip as like kind of like an adornment on the dress, right? And so I was like, why doesn't he do really interesting things with fabrics and do really interesting things with adornments? Because that's a very Schiaparelli thing to do. And in this collection, when you look into the fabric manipulations that happen in this collection, he's doing that. He explored a lot of different fabrics and materials. He played with a lot of different fabrics. So I was really happy to learn that when I was just learning about the ideas in the show and like some of the fabrics used. So that was something that I really liked. To be fair, even though I'm a damn Daniel apologist, I think this was his weakest collection of his last 4, though I still think it's very good personally. I think something I didn't like about this collection, to be honest, was in terms of inspiration, Daniel Roseberry talked about how he was heavily inspired by Azzedine Alaïa's archive, right? And if you guys don't know, Azzedine Alaïa's archive has a lot of pieces from a lot of different brands. Obviously, Azzedine Alaïa's clothes himself, but there are also a lot of clothes of other different designers because Alaïa just used to collect really interesting things. And a lot of pieces in the collection were so inspired by so many different designers of designs that Azzedine has in his collection. And I was just a bit like, this is a Schiaparelli show though. Why are you referencing all these different designers and being inspired by Azzedine's archive? I don't know. I just felt a bit weird about being inspired by that. I thought it was a bit strange. But apart from that, yeah, I did like some of the ideas. Of course, some of the references, especially like the dressage knots, was a bit much. We had those on a lot of different looks. We have the Western buckles, overload, and a lot of the pieces. But yeah. What does someone say? He doesn't have his own handwriting yet. Yeah, that was the sense I got when he was, talking about all this like Azzedine Alaïa archive. I was like, he shouldn't have said that. He shouldn't have said that. Because you're basically just saying, okay, fair enough. I like that he pays homage to, designers and he's actually owning up to the fact that he's inspired by these designers and whatever. Some designers like to pretend that they invented some new thing. I always like it when designers are, very open about the designers that they're inspired by. If we think of like Rick Owens has talked about the fact that, I took the bias cut from Madeleine Vionnet and I modernized it in my own way, but he's still paying homage to Madeleine Vionnet and saying that, I took a lot of ideas from Vionnet's work. I do like that, but Rick Owens at this point has his own design language though. Daniel Roseberry, I think he's still trying to find that perfect balance between, how can I modernize Schiaparelli but still keep it Elsa Schiaparelli? And I think in pursuit of doing that, you shouldn't really be looking that outside of the brand to other designers and being inspired by other designers' work when there's so many references you can pull from. Like in this collection, we've seen some of them. You're pulling inspiration from your Texas background, which is interesting, right? There's so many things just in everyday life. What did you see when you're walking around, in Paris? Like, what did you see when you were growing up in Texas? What were you living around? What kind of things have you experienced in your life? There's other things to reference other than, other designers. And also you can reference philosophies. So there are certain ways that Elsa Schiaparelli thinks, and you can take that understanding of thinking and then just turn that on its head and use it in your own way, if that makes sense. But that's just me talking. Leo is going hard on this collection. Jeez. Something I did like though is so especially the early collections, Daniel Roseberry was referencing Schiaparelli's work, like I said, a bit obviously. So things that are so obviously Elsa Schiaparelli, like, things like the measuring tape, the keyhole, the anatomy, all these kind of things he was referencing heavily. That's why even that famous Kim Kardashian like bodice that has the abs on it, the green one, that's such an obvious Schiaparelli reference. Or, you know, these jackets with just the measuring tape across the whole thing. And I like how in this collection, they are done in a secret way. They're almost like nuggets, like Easter eggs. You have to kind of find them. And if you look at the detail shots on Vogue Runway, you see like, oh, there'll be a necklace and there'll be a little keyhole and things like that. So you have to really look for the references. That was interesting because it's very different to what I've seen in a lot of past Schiaparelli collections. Radley says the Texas reference pieces are the most interesting for me. Leo goes hard, but he tells the truth. I love Leo. I love Leo. Leo is critical. Leo is critical. Leo is not easily impressed. Yellow says, I wonder if he was referencing himself with this collection because it might be his last. I hope not. I hope not. Every time I think of Daniel Roseberry now, I don't know why, but the thought that comes to my mind is when when I think was it Northwest was basically shitting on his clothes, and I'm like, how is Northwest shitting on a crazy accomplished designer this way and acting like this guy does not there's not a lot of care that goes into the kind of designs that he does. It's just, I couldn't imagine being Daniel Roseberry and being as accomplished as Daniel Roseberry and having some like little kid talk about how my things are trash and oh, this doesn't look good and blah 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 blah. That was crazy. I was like, shout out to Daniel Roseberry for keeping a cool head. I could not in that situation. I could not. Damn. ATS said to you, he hasn't seen the clothes her dad designs. Damn. 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 Northwest talking about the pearls was real but serious. That child is a demon. I mean, didn't Northwest say the pearls don't even look real, they look fake? And then Kim Kardashian was like, they're real. Northwest thinks that and the way Northwest said it with confidence, with vim, with chest. Real pearls do be looking fake sometimes. The vim and vigor that she said it with. It was so insane. Oh yeah, going back to the conversation we were having earlier, where people are talking about nudity. Here's some more nudity for the people that were, you know, offended by nudity in fashion. Here's some more for you. I think because fashion is like so pop culture now, fashion is almost basically hand in hand with pop culture in a way that I don't think it was when I first got into fashion. I think fashion as a whole was just niche. Like people didn't have a clue what I was talking about when I was younger. I find it really interesting that all these collections now make it to a part of society that doesn't really understand what goes on in the fashion world. So these things just like hit those like super conservative, like right-wing Christian YouTubers, and they're like, this is a ploy. They want all women to be naked. It's a plot. they want women to be walking the street with no clothes on, da, 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 da. And it's like, Jesus Christ. The gowns will be worn at galas for sure. Yeah, 100%. 100%. I'm going to see if I can get Schiaparelli's Instagram up, because they'll have, and I'll go through the Vogue looks too. I can't even speak. It's what happens when you speak too much. I'll try and get the Vogue look so we can see some of the detail shots. So this is like the dressage, Texas-inspired piece. They say, with a pair of matching denim trousers fully embroidered with silk satin spikes, inspired by equestrian dressage knots, paired with cowboy-inspired mules with S-shaped heels. Interesting. And there are also other versions, of course, like there's this one, there's, the brown one, and a suede bomber kind of version. That was interesting. You've got this half one. I hope they show the back, because the back was interesting too. Let's see if they show. Okay, yeah, so you can see like the sort of horsehair, which is a continued inspiration of the piece at the back of the piece. Yeah, okay, so you can see it clearly here. He said, run some ads. The largest porn industry is in the United States, and at the same time, the most dogmatic people are zealots, the paradigm. Cobb said, Bantu not. Bantu not realness. That's hilarious. That is so funny. Bantu knots. They really seem to be focusing on these like silk satin dressage spikes. There's a clear focus in this collection. Maybe these were the pieces that they're trying to push. These were, the standout pieces, but it didn't work. Also, can you guys see with that bag, the keyhole there? So that's what I was talking about in terms of the references that Daniel Roseberry normally looked, but he tried to subdue them with this collection. I also really like the jewelry. Kind of like this exoskeleton rib cage looking jewelry is a very Schiaparelli thing to do, because I mean, a lot of Schiaparelli's work was looking at the human form and the anatomy and manipulating that with fabric, right? So that is a very, very interesting way of using Schiaparelli's ideas. Business of Fashion did report that Schiaparelli loses money and doesn't make any profit. They need to create a fragrance or an easily merchandisable item. And the funny thing is, historically, they had that fragrance, right? Wasn't there like a shocking pink fragrance? I could be wrong though. You guys correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't Schiaparelli have a fragrance? It was either called Shocking, or it was like Shocking Pink or something along those lines. So I'm quite surprised that they're not really leaning into fragrance, because it's such a missed opportunity if you're a big brand not to have fragrances, because it just makes so much money. So much money. Oh, it's called Shocking You. Okay, interesting. Those nets remind me of water. Interesting. Obviously, the craftsmanship that goes into it is amazing. I mean, I don't, to be honest, there is no haute couture show where the craftsmanship doesn't go into it. I mean, there are literally rules in how these pieces have to be made, right? So that goes without saying. I think I like talking about the concepts and less so maybe the fabrics and the craft that goes into it, because one, I think we have a very clear understanding, at least my audience, that craftsmanship goes into every couture show. Um, and my perspective on fashion is always from the narrative. It's a narrative based perspective rather than craft. Although I will mention it, even though I have to talk about craft when it comes to Sorry Not Sorry, a lot of the vapid shows that a lot of the major brands are showing, because there is nothing else to talk about. If you don't talk about the fabrics and you don't talk about very, very small things, then there's nothing left. I also like this spinal piece. A lot of people said it was a reference to Alexander McQueen, which I definitely see, but it is a Schiaparelli reference. It's just talking about like anatomy. And then this is the strawberry skirt that people are talking about too. The bodice, very excessive jewelry. Also have the microchip dress. Let's see what they've got there, because he was saying that a lot of this stuff was really difficult to source. You've got like a Nokia, you've got some random plugs, some chips and stuff. Calculator. I can't remember the last time I used a calculator that looked like that. It seems like yesterday when I was studying engineering and I was doing engineering maths and I was using calculator. Well, not like that. I was using better calculators than that. Otherwise, I would have been, yeah. You've got some like old cameras, point and shoot, some CDs, some cartridges, mirrors. Interesting. And a matching bag. So they've also put crystals in it too. That's very OTT. Should have put an iPod Shuffle. When did the iPod Shuffle come out? Because everything had to be pre-2007. I feel like the iPod Shuffle came out after that. Let me Google it. First generation release date of an iPod Shuffle. Oh, wow. An iPod Shuffle came out in 2005. Oh my God, I'm old. Why does it feel like iPod Shuffles were like newer than that? I am old. Oh my gosh. The backbone kind of looks like a fishbone too, which is a Schiaparelli reference. Yeah. You know, obviously the piece that everyone's talking about, the robot baby. I think that this was supposed to be the piece that was the hero look. This is the look that's supposed to do the rounds on social media. And I don't think that compared to like the lion head and things like that, I don't think it had the same effect. We've got some more cowboy boots with embellishments. And of course, Maggie, who's damn near the face of Schiaparelli at this point. It's just that's what Daniel Roseberry said. So in the show notes, and in an interview, he said that he sourced pre-2007 technology. I think because it was just really a commentary on like how fast technology moves, and he wanted to show that by just specifically getting technology that was before a certain time, or maybe before this current generation of like robot babies, technology kids were born, right? A vest top for couture though. I mean, that's what everyone is doing. Maybe not for couture, but you remember that season when like Bottega, Chloe, Prada, everyone was doing like the white vest, and Bottega was doing the whole you think it's cotton but it's actually leather. Loewe even did it as well. This is also a good look, pre-2008 crisis. That's a good way of looking at it also. Gen Z cutoff. Is that when the Gen Z cutoff? That makes even more sense. Let me see, Gen Z. What's the Gen Z age range? So Gen Z is mid to late 1990s to the early 2010s. So yeah, actually, it's perfectly fit in with, when the next is close to the end, right? So when the next generation were born, these technology kids. Let me see if I want to go through some of the detail shots on Vogue Runway just to have a look. Literally an iPad baby. This is interesting. Also, I think another interesting concept that I read about was the fact that Daniel Roseberry obviously was juxtaposing the old with the new. So old techniques with the new, which is a very Schiaparelli thing to do. So even when you look at this piece, you have this like old lace technique. See if we can get a zoom in. And then you have this sort of like latex, like nylon looking fabric that's more of the time of now. So you're manipulating fabrics in a modern way, but then also making sure you're using old craft techniques and you're juxtaposing the two together. That's a very Schiaparelli thing to do because Schiaparelli would have storied embroidery techniques alongside, like I said, zips as an embellishment in plastic, which just wasn't done. And at the time, those kind of zips weren't widely used because I think metal zippers were kind of like the thing. And I think plastic zippers were a thing that came in the 30s. And I even read that apparently Schiaparelli got paid an amount of money to use the zips. Here we have also one of those like keyhole, the if you know references rather than it being on the nose, which I'm used to seeing from Daniel Roseberry when it comes to the keyhole references, the funnel neck. We've got another keyhole on the toe of the shoes. It's like skeleton rib cage jewelry. We've got the Western belt, and then also we have this kind of fabric that we saw earlier being used again here. These trousers, I'm not sure what material that looks like, but it looks like cotton. From a zoom in, this looks very cotton-like. Could be something else though, who knows? Cowboy boots, some more jewelry. See, once again here, we can see these keyhole references. So they're kind of like just like nuggets that you have to find. Bodice, we've got some more of the footwear. We've got the spine piece, robot baby. I kind of like this this ear embellishment. I didn't notice this watching the show, and you've even got the microchips also. That's kind of cool. That's really, really interesting. I wonder how they put that on. If they just like stuck it on and then they have to take everything off, or if it's actually a removable piece. That would be really interesting if it's a removable piece. Did someone just say they call the knot jackets the pegging jackets? Jesus Christ. Oh, God. Robot baby. Someone said beyond a few pieces, it wasn't really a strong collection. I mean, I definitely prefer other collections I've seen from Schiaparelli. I just really like the focus on, playing with new materials, the old and new, the juxtaposition, because I think it's presenting a different understanding of what, Elsa Schiaparelli is, other than just surrealism galore. So that's something that I really, really appreciated. Also, I read somewhere that this piece here, it looks like sort of like denim or like whatever, but it's actually velvet, which is really interesting. So a bit of, optical illusions going on there. Another keyhole. A lot of keyholes in this collection, aren't there? And this is where I start to have a gripe with, like, once again, Daniel Roseberry Schiaparelli, because it's like you're referencing the same things over and over again. Schiaparelli's world is so vast that you don't have to reference the same things constantly. But then I say that, but then my rebuttal to my own statement would be, if you're trying to introduce, Schiaparelli to an audience that for the most part still don't understand it, they're just starting to understand it, do you have to make it so overcomplicated and so deep when you're really just getting these people to understand? And I don't really know the answers to that. You guys can answer that. Because once again, like I said earlier in the live stream, he is one of the few designers that's been able to bring any sort of interest back to Schiaparelli since Schiaparelli herself left the brand. I like, this is really interesting. They have this like plain looking shirt and then they have a Schiaparelli pencil. Very Schiaparelli. Daniel is more interested in decorating / ornamenting women rather than dressing them. His silhouettes are just very basic, Vogue patterns, stiff fabrics, no movement or lightness, no interesting cutting. I think some of the cuts are interesting. I definitely think some of the cuts are interesting. Two adverts came up. Yeah, Cobb, it's like he's treating the keyhole as a logo. I agree. I agree. And isn't it kind of funny, like this Western galore? Obviously, we saw it with Pharrell. Just seems to be a lot of Western. Okay, we've got another earring. That's the microchip earring. Do you guys think these things would sell? Imagine spending, like $10,000 or however much these earrings are going to cost on some pre-2007 found in the rubbish motherboard microchip, and then you have just crystals around it. Do you guys think that these are going to sell and people are going to buy these? These angel-like wings are very reoccurring theme in this collection. You've got some more of the dressage knots, the exoskeleton, referencing Schiaparelli's skeleton dress, but also like the horses, the Western culture. Yeah, I think once you've seen like a few of the looks, you understand the inspiration of, the collection. Main reason being because if we just look at the looks now, so many of the looks are the same silhouette wise. They're just different fabric and color, right? So even these like belt buckles, obviously it's a theme that we see across a lot of the collection. We have these knots across a lot of pieces. We have these angel wings across a lot of pieces, like this look here, this look here. I really did like the exoskeleton, the skeleton dress, his version of it. That was really interesting. So maybe there could just be more variety in terms of silhouette. That would be really interesting. People buy Bottega earrings and those are made of brass. Are they even gold plated? Yeah, I think it's kind of interesting. I think consumers these days, they accept the bare minimum from these brands and it really annoys me. Like Chanel show jewelry, the quality is a shit show. It's atrocious. And it costs so much for what it is. But just because it's Chanel, people buy it. This is why I'm so like disenfranchised with fashion. I don't really buy many clothes. I buy clothes sparingly. I might buy one jacket in a year. I buy clothes really slowly because I just can't bring myself to buy a lot of these things unless it's like Ars Villamista or like this Rick Owens jacket I've had for like 2 years now. And I don't pay retail for anything. I'm not that rich. This jacket retailed for some insane price. I think this jacket retailed for maybe 2,000 or something like insane or close to that. And I must have gotten it on sale for about not even on sale, like family and friends discount, but it it still cost me an arm and a leg. I had to save up for it. It was like maybe like £1,000 or something like that. So yeah, I just don't have the money to buy a lot of clothes, and also I just don't want to waste the money on stuff that just isn't worth it. Like this denim jacket, it feels sturdy, it feels rigid, it feels good quality, which is why I bought it. But yeah, a lot of the clothes these days, it's just like, wow, consumers will buy anything. Isabella says, thank you for live streaming while I'm cutting an over 36-piece suit jacket pattern. Oh my God. Shout out to you and your suit pattern. We've got designers doing the Lord's work in the background of the live stream. His concept was a bit too simplistic. He made clothes that created the narrative. Okay, yeah. I mean, it's very hard to... Okay, let's just have this conversation, right? So when I was in school, I had a lecturer called Judith Watt for a bit. And Judith Watt comes from that school of thought of, like, you have to know the reference of the reference to the reference of the reference to the reference of the reference, which makes for the students that obviously study fashion journalism at Central St. Martin's become exceptionally good journalists, because we are taught by journalists that, one, work in the industry, two, know tons about fashion history. And so they kind of turn us into these, knowledgeable fashion history kids. I mean, we did Diana Vreeland projects, and we did projects about like history, and we had lectures on 18th century, 17th century fashion, 19th century fashion. So you graduate from the school having a very, very deep understanding and knowledge of fashion. When you come from that kind of schooling, the way you understand fashion is just so different. It's so different. Like, if I was a designer, there's a vast amount of things that I have an understanding that I could reference and I could story tell. And even like when I used to work with designers on projects, the way that they would really get them to go deep into what they're referencing and really tell a cohesive story that makes sense. You can't just say, I'm referencing this, and just slap the references on the nose. You won't get good grades if you do that. So designers really had to find ways, intelligent ways of referencing things. So when you come from that school of thought, John Galliano is from that school of thought, Alexander McQueen is from that school of thought. It's why it comes so easily for them to tell stories. And I think that because a lot of designers aren't educated in that way, I genuinely feel like sometimes they have a hard time telling these stories through clothes. And it's not many designers that can do that, right? It's a very difficult skill to, acquire and learn. And obviously, if you go to a school like CSM, you get taught it, they hone it in you, but a lot of designers don't have that. And it's okay. Like, not every designer has to be John Galliano. That's like, John Galliano is like the top of the top. John Galliano is like, when you talk about John Galliano, you talk about John Galliano, can't even speak, alongside designers like Alexander McQueen and the Maison Margielas and the Rei Kawakubos and the Yohji Yamamotos. And that's the level of design that those guys are in. They're in a class of their own. Daniel Roseberry is not in that class. And I don't think we have to force him into that class or expect him to design in a way that designers from that class of designers design, if that makes sense. Judith doesn't teach at CSM anymore. DM me, I'll tell you why she doesn't teach at CSM, but she's not there anymore. So you won't be taught by Judith. You just won't. The lack of sterling silver from major houses is why I'm pushed to boring Scandinavian brands for jewelry. The value isn't there for brands. Also, if you apply for MA Fashion and Fashion Journalism at CSM, I sometimes lecture on the MA Fashion Journalism course. So you might see me if you're on that course. Said I was laughing like a villain. Yeah, because something happened that I'm not going to talk about in the stream. But Leo, if you DM me, I'll tell you on Instagram what happened. But yeah, that's the Schiaparelli show anyway. I've rambled for long enough. Do you guys have any final or parting thoughts on the Schiaparelli show before we go to the last show of today, which is the Jean-Paul Gaultier / Simone Rocha show? Yellow, I didn't do an MA. I just did a BA fashion journalism at CSM. I'm kind of tired of school. I've had enough school for one lifetime. I mean, geez, I studied chemical engineering. I did a different degree in fashion. Like, I've had enough. I don't ever want to see a school again unless I'm like lecturing or guest lecturing. I don't ever want to be a student in a school again. Maybe I'll change my mind years later, but in the recent future, in the near future, definitely not. I don't want to be anywhere near a school. Like, I just don't. Oh, Leo says I'm in my final year doing history at Cambridge right now. And I'm kind of done with academia, so I'm hoping for the design MA more. Yeah, I don't know what it is about. Like, I've just had enough of school. It's like, it's enough. But Leo, you're a brain box. If you study history at Cambridge, oh my God, you're an intelligent fella. You are intelligent. You are very, very smart. Definitely smarter than me. Because I definitely never had the grades to get into Cambridge ever. Yeah, that's insane. Yeah, exactly. I've done 6 years at university. I've had enough. I don't ever want to see a university if I'm not lecturing. But yeah, just what Mike is at. What an esteemed degree. History at Cambridge. Oh my gosh. That is a very, very esteemed degree, sir. Very, 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 very esteemed. Leo is Saltburn. Just switch the Oxford for the Cambridge. That explains why Leo is so eloquent. I don't know why every time I hear about like Oxford or Cambridge, I just go into that posh voice. That's just how I assume the kind of people that go to Cambridge sound, because most of the people that, go to Oxford or go to Cambridge, they're like legacies. So yes, normal people like me have to get insane grades to go to a school like Oxford, but if you're part of the royal family, you can get Bs and still get into Oxford. So that's why a lot of the students, that end up at schools like Oxford are just like rich kids who sound like this and like, oh my God, I go to Oxford. Like, Oxford is my personality. Leah said we don't wear suits during exams. That's very Oxford. Cambridge seems a bit less. It's obviously still a historical school and it's on par with Oxford in how we view it, especially in the UK. But Cambridge doesn't have those kind of weird traditions in the way that Oxford does. Extended vowels and all the vocal fry. Yeah, Cambridge, like Leo said, Cambridge is way more chill than Oxford. Oxford to me is just like, yeah, that's where our horrible politicians all go to study. Our politicians that don't know their left from right. Okay, so let's jump straight into the Jean-Paul Gaultier Haute Couture collection. So to kind of just talk about Jean-Paul Gaultier in general. So Jean-Paul Gaultier in 2020 announced that he would stop designing haute couture collections at his house, but he opened up his house to have guest designers every season. So in the past, we've seen many different people. Off the top of my head, we've had Chiso Seyabe, we've had Haida Ackerman, We've had, who else have we had? Olivier Rousteing. We've had Glenn Martins. I know I'm forgetting someone. There's someone I'm forgetting, but we've had many different designers is the point. And this season, Simone Rocha is the guest designer. Now, this collection, there was a clear focus on the female form, this kind of idea of fragility but strength, kind of referencing back to Rei Kawakubo's Spring Summer 2005 collection is a collection that always comes into my head in terms of this idea of women being feminine and fragile, but also being intelligent and strong and powerful, and that dichotomy between those different things. That is kind of the thought process that Simone Rocha came to in this collection. And she managed to imbue, because Simone Rocha is a designer that I definitely love. I've referenced a lot of her work on this channel. I mean, I have videos describing a lot of her work. She is inspired by a lot of her Chinese and Irish heritage. I mean, some of the past references to her collections, for example, she's had a collection that was, referencing Rende in Ireland. She's had collections that are inspired by traditional Chinese porcelain and kind of how that has transitioned into Delftware and the movement of that. And just this idea of the fact that, historical things have different meaning depending on how they're adopted in different regions. She has very interesting designs. And there are also signatures of Simone Rocha's work, the use of ribbons, the use of soft fabrics like tulle, and all those things are references in this collection as well, which are very Simone Rocha. I even read that this look that you're seeing here is actually Irish crochet dipped in silver, which is really interesting. Irish crochet is actually a technique that Jean-Paul Gaultier has used himself, and she thought it was interesting to bring back a lot of Irish crochet, traditional Irish crochet techniques into this collection. So yeah, very, very Simone Rocha, but at the same time imbuing this sort of playful, sexy aesthetic to Jean-Paul Gaultier. When I was looking at the collection, I thought, because the way Simone Rocha does sexy is very covering up different parts of the body using different fabrics. And she said that actually in a lot of shows in the past, where she likes this idea of using very rigid and hard fabrics and then, soft fabrics to show different parts of the woman's form and to play with that. Whereas the sexiness in this Jean-Paul Gaultier collection is more Jean-Paul Gaultier. It's more in your face, if that makes sense. So I found that really interesting. Jörn says this collection was good, but there were some clothes that were not connected. Interesting. But yeah, I just saw it as a very, here you've got more ribbons. It's literally just Simone Rocha galore. She's even got the translucent heels, which she's done for her own brand. Yeah, so I just thought her design language was just everywhere across this collection, but it's very Simone Rocha greatest hits mixed with Jean-Paul Gaultier ideas. Redley says, love this collection, so fragile. Rocha was like, oh, Haute Couture is mainly a marketing expense. Bet I'm gonna get this bag. Leo says it's too frou-frou. Isn't that what Simone Rocha's work is, though? Very frilly, pearls in the hair, ribbons everywhere, tall fabrics everywhere, flowy dresses. Isn't that kind of what Simone Rocha is, though? It is very frou-frou. It is very girly. It's very, yeah, that's what Simone Rocha is. The yellow says it's a branding exercise rather than a collection. Like even here, like when I said it's like best hits of Simone Rocha mixed with Jean-Paul Gaultier, obviously those are a reference to the famous cone bras that everyone knows about Jean-Paul Gaultier, and there are other references to cone bras in this collection. Even like, for example, we see the sailor hats, the Jean-Paul Gaultier sailor hats with the ribbons hanging from the side. That's a good way to fuse the two houses together. Yeah, exactly. The frill and twee of it all is for sure her signature. I totally agree. For the collabs, how much does the guest designer have in terms of budget? They have the atelier, of course, but I can't imagine she has the freedom to work with outside artisans you may need. I have no idea. That's actually a really good question. If anyone in the comments knows how these things work, especially in terms of budget, please let me know, because I literally I'm none the wiser. Also, I kind of like that sailor look that's inspired by obviously the very famous Jean Paul Gaultier piece, but she's done her version in ribbons. That's a good touch, because I think that's less obvious or on the nose, or less, it's more difficult to do than all the other guest designers when they've referenced that same Jean Paul Gaultier piece. It's the most interesting iteration of that, in my opinion. In the same way, Margiela was heavy on the Galliano. This was very Simone with subtle nods to Jean Paul Gaultier, opposite of Roseberry. Yeah, I agree. There's definitely more Simone here than Jean Paul Gaultier. Same way, like, no, but the thing about John Galliano's show is that it was very John Galliano. It was like 10% Margiela. What was Margiela about the John Galliano show was obviously the deconstruction, reconstruction with a lot of the pieces, the imperfection, the beauty and imperfection is an idea that John Galliano uses, but Martin Margiela himself used to use. Other ideas, you know, like the tabby boots in all the different iterations and things like that. Those were the obvious nods to Margiela. But in terms of theme, that was John Galliano all the time. I saw people on Twitter, just people in general, but on Twitter I saw it, of people, you know, comparing this John Galliano show to, you know, the famous Maison Margiela show with the kids running around in the underground space. I can see the similarities. So I guess that's very Margiela in that sense. It's showing a viewpoint of Paris that is not the cliche version of Eiffel Tower, Champs-Élysées kind of look on Paris. So yeah. This speaks a lot to what Ryan Yip was saying about how a lot of a collection's value is determined online by how many references we can spot. Do you think so? Because I think that John Galliano's collection, it wasn't really, okay, yes, he did reference himself in a few ways, but it wasn't really about, okay, this is a reference to this. Look 5 is a reference to this. It was more a total understanding of these are different characters in a Parisian underbelly who are trying to find their voice. Some of them have been in a fight. Some of them, you know, have been outside all day and now they're in their nightlife, which is why their black has been sun-dyed. Beauty and imperfections. It's more of a total narrative rather than just, okay, look 1, this references this. Look 2, this references this. Of course, in the show, there were the separate references. Like if we talk about the dolls, if we talk about the references to the photographer or the painter, those are kind of like the obvious references that you can see and that were mentioned in the show notes also. So they're not really difficult to see. But yeah, maybe online it makes people feel intelligent. They're like, oh, this is a reference to this, even though for the most part, all these references are in the show notes anyway. Like I do find it really interesting how, like when the John Galliano Margiela show came out and I was on Twitter just because I like to know what people think about the collection. And there were these people trying to sound intelligent and they were like, it's quite interesting how I was able to decipher that John Galliano referenced da-da-da-da-da, but the way they worded it was exactly how it was worded in the show notes. And I'm like, it's okay. Like, they're in the show notes. It's fine. You can be like, oh, this was a reference to this. I read it in the show notes. It's okay. Like, you don't have to pretend that, oh my God, I am the all-seeing. I understand John Galliano's aesthetic so well that, I just found out this thing on my own. It's really funny how that kind of happens on social media. They're literally in the show notes. They're in the show notes. Go on Show Studio's website. We can all read it. Everyone in this live stream can read the same show notes. Micah said, again, it goes back to that thing that people don't even know what the show notes are. Like, there's so many that don't know they even exist. I guess that's true. I guess that's true in a sense. But yeah, I don't know. People like to pretend. That's why I just come on the stream and say, I could regurgitate John Galliano's, techniques. Let's say I was making, this wasn't a live stream, it was a video, then I would regurgitate the show notes, because the way I would edit the video would be in a way where it would make sense and it'll be more snappy and people will be able to understand the themes. But in the live stream, I'm just going to be like, yeah, go to Show Studio's website. You can read about all of John Galliano's techniques on the show notes. So there's no point pretending like I'll come on here and be like, yes, John Galliano was working with these different fabrics in this very intricate way. If you see the way that he mixed the lace with the wool, and it was a trompe l'oeil because it was supposed to look like leather, but actually it's wool felt. So hilarious. Yeah, like Canuck said, it's okay to say you don't know. It's fine. It's fine. Same with contemporary artist notes in exhibitions. What, do people regurgitate artist notes and then pretend that they're all knowing? Because people always ask me, oh, how are you able to, review these shows? Like, how do you have such an understanding, or how do you have like knowledge on like these shows? And it's like, well, first of all the information is in the show notes, like for example in the John Galliano collection. And then also, if you know about John Galliano's work in the past, then you can see how he's referencing himself, and then you can see, the similarities. Like, for example, something I didn't even mention is like, if you think of, what's that collection? Was it Spring Summer 2000? Was it Spring Summer 2000 where it was the Hobo collection? Whereas the collection where, this is Christian Dior Spring Summer 2000, I think. You guys can correct me in the comments, but it was that collection that was inspired by John Galliano walking in Paris and being inspired by the homeless people that he sees every day in Paris. And that had loads of backlash because like all these models are wearing like dreads and stuff and all of that. And it was like really crazy, right? And I could draw parallels to the collection that he just showed, but I feel like this was way better executed. Or let's say it was better executed for a generation that's more sensitive to things like that, right? But the concept was kind of similar. I could see some similarities in the concept. So if you have a good understanding of a designer's work in the past, it's not very hard to decipher where the ideas are going to come from. Most designers have tendencies to reference certain ideas. And then if you have the show notes on top of that and they're useful, and then you have interviewed quotes and all of these things, then you can start to really understand what's going on in the collection. So it's not rocket science. I feel like sometimes people act like they're so intelligent because they can break down a show, but it's not rocket science. I'm here to tell you it's not rocket science. Can you, Understitch, Westwaster, Reggie Casual, 2x80, organize your own panels like Show Studio? It would be great to absorb. Oh my God. That's like Fashion Avengers panels. That's kind of like, I don't know though, because maybe Tuba has a different perspective. But the rest of us is like, if I think of like Bliss Foster, Understitch Me, we have a very journalistic standpoint of viewing fashion. And I think a good thing about show studio panels is that they bring people from a vast amount of places in fashion. So they might bring a stylist, they might bring a photographer. So then stylists and photographers are, you know, talking about, oh, the photography, the way it was shot, because I don't really talk about stuff like that, right? Or, oh, the way it was styled is kind of interesting. This stylist styled it. It gives you different perspectives. I think if it's just like me and Understitch, depending on what you guys want to see and like Bliss Foster and stuff, it's just going to become a history lesson, right? We're just going to start talking about, okay, we remember this show and it reminds me of this show, and we're just going to talk about fashion history. And maybe a subsect of my audience likes to watch stuff like that, but then that might bore some other people who are like, you're just talking about fashion history all the time. It's just like you're just talking about references and stuff. Yeah, Leo, those early show studio panels were legendary. I think it's down to the people they had on the panels too, like Mima Viglizio and Finn McTaggart, and who else did they used to have on those panels? Like Lou Stoppard was a really good host, sensational host. Yeah, it was amazing. Micah, to be fair, I'd argue the intelligent part is being able to present ideas of the show in a coherent manner. It's actually harder than you think. Yeah, that goes back to when I was talking about like CSM, how you're taught, um, and how they kind of train you to think that way. Like, geez, if you read about John Galliano and you read about his initial ideas for his graduate show and how Louise Wilson basically scrapped it and was like, no, we need you to think more like with more intention, if that makes sense. And now John Galliano's graduate show is a crazy show that we will always remember. So that's just the thing. It's just, I think it comes down to how you view fashion. And that's honestly why, for most designers, it's good to get an education, a formal education in fashion, because everyone believes that they can think these ways and like on their own, but most people can't, to be fair. Most people can't. It's overdue. You need to get Ryan on here. Oh my God, Ryan. I talked about it in the last live stream, but I'm a huge fan. I'm literally a fanboy of Ryan Finn. I just think Ryan Finn is amazing. Yeah, Louise Wilson was an icon. R.I.P. Wait, who shaded who? I feel like I've just missed something. Canuck says, give us what we want. Give us what we want. But yeah, anyway, going back to the Simone Rocha show, I feel like we've talked about everything because once again, a lot of these shows outside the Galliano show that aren't layers on layers. So it's just more about, okay, what are the techniques that they use to make these clothes? What are the fabrics? All those kind of things. We've talked about the Irish references, the traditional crocheting techniques and stuff like that. But yeah, I liked the show. It was very Simone Rocha, but I liked the show. And really, really fun ways of referencing Jean-Paul Gaultier's ideas. But to close, well, not to close per se, but to, finish off with this Jean-Paul Gaultier collection. What were your guys' thoughts on the collection in general? What did you guys think? Some detail shots. Oh, we got the ribbon earrings, as always. The clear footwear, flowers, petals. This is really cool, like these details. Not sure why this show wasn't ready to wear. I guess because Jean-Paul Gaultier dissolved his ready-to-wear line, no? Because I remember Jean-Paul Gaultier at one point, he dissolved his ready-to-wear line just to focus on couture, and then he retired from couture. So I don't even know if like ready-to-wear even exists at Jean-Paul Gaultier anymore. I know on the website you can buy like a lot of like the hits, like you can buy some like tattoo collection stuff and some like sailor stuff, but I don't even know if they do ready-to-wear anymore. And I like it. I just think it gives designers who don't have the infrastructure to have a haute couture house a chance to, do different designs. Also, something I did notice in this collection that I did like, the footwear. I liked those kind of like ballerina looking derbies, the lace up derbies. Yeah, these ones here. I really like these. These are really interesting. Are they doing already to our line from this? Also, like we had the Glen Martin stuff everywhere. I believe so. There's definitely pieces in this collection that I see a lot of people wearing, especially these shoes or the heels and stuff. The jewelry, I think, is going to do really well. I genuinely feel like the jewelry is going to do really well. We've got some Kylie Jenner wearing a custom piece. Jean-Paul Gaultier, Simone Rocha piece. Kylie Jenner, I don't want to be mean, but she doesn't wear a lot of these pieces with confidence. She almost looks like awkward wearing it. You got to like own it. You got some of the campaign images. The making of Kylie Jenner's piece. Her sailor hat for £250. She managed to capture some of the more delicate elements of Jean-Paul Gaultier. Yeah, I agree. They give Kylie what they want to sell. It's just like Kylie, like I don't even think Kylie has a style. I just think Kylie is just like whatever you just put on me, I'll just wear. It's just so like this is what I mean about fashion being vapid. This is why John Galliano's collection was so refreshing because it's just like you just wear whatever, dress however, like no refinement, no style, no consideration for anything. Just throw this on because they're paying me to wear it. It's just so like, God, it's like, damn. Especially because if you're Kylie, like you're famous enough to where you can wear whatever you want. They will just put you in whatever you say you want because you're that famous. So you actually have a choice, but she doesn't have the foresight or even the taste or the refinement to even create a cohesive style or really decide what she wants to wear, which is why they just slap any old look on her that they want to push. The way we're talking about how she doesn't have a style yet, she's trying to have a brand name, Kai. That's crazy, actually. Not having any signature style, but having a whole brand is insane. It's actually insane. But that's the world we live in. A black silk taffeta apron gown adorned by chic black silk pom details. Very Simone Rocha. Extremely Simone Rocha. Yeah, I like the way she referenced this with ribbons. And then we've got the footwear again. The ballerina derby hybrids. Got the sailor hats. I feel like these will do really well because the kind of girls that wear um, Simone Rocha, this is the kind of with the ribbons hanging down from the sides. This is what they love. And this, I feel like this hat is the most ballet corps meets sailor hat ever. And because ballet corps is like coming back, well, Chanel tried to push it. Um, that should be interesting to see what people do with that. Oh, that's cute. Warm embrace between Simone Rocha and Jean-Paul Gaultier. The coquette core girls would love that sailor ribbon hat. I agree. I think I have a funny Simone Rocha story actually. I last year I went to the Met Gala, and on my flight back from New York to London from the Met Gala, I was on the same flight with Simone Rocha. But because obviously I was there for the Met Gala, so it was very likely that I was probably going to be on the same flight going back to London with someone who is big in the industry. But I just didn't think anything of it. So when I saw Simone Rocha's face, I was like, is that Simone Rocha? That can't be. That can't be. And then she started talking on the phone and she had like her thick Irish accent. I was like, oh my God, that's actually Simone Rocha. So I was speaking to her. Um, and then we went our separate ways in the plane because she was like sitting further in front of me. But it was really cool to have a nice chat with Simone Rocha. Because I was just telling her how like I was talking about some of her shows and how I like some of the references to the shows, and I was kind of trying to understand. This is my journalist mind just coming out of nowhere. I was trying to understand why she was referencing it in that way. So I was asking her those collections. It's kind of like an interview. And she was kind enough to answer my questions. So yeah, that was really interesting. But yeah, that's my little Simone Rocha story for you guys. Interview on the plane. I wasn't talking to her on the plane because we weren't sat near each other. So I was um I was talking to her before we went on the plane. So when we were waiting to board the plane, that's when I was talking to her, not actually on the plane. She probably doesn't remember because I'm really irrelevant. I'm really irrelevant in fashion. I'm not like the editor in chief of Vogue. She probably doesn't remember. Ion name dropping in his Met Gala lifestyle. It's not that. It's So the reason I even got to go to the Met Gala was because when I was in uni, I didn't have the time to post YouTube content when I was studying at CSM, right? So I hired an editor to kind of clip my old videos and post shorts on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. And Instagram kind of, I guess, caught wind of because my IG reels were doing really well at the time. I need to start posting on IG more. So the Instagram fashion team saw it, and because Meta was sponsoring the Met Gala last year, so I guess they had a lot of say on like who to invite, a lot of the budget as well. So they just invited a lot of content creators that were doing things on Instagram. So I was part of the content creators they invited. That's why. Otherwise, I wouldn't have gone. He said, dropped it so casual. That was when I remember when I was posting a lot of shorts and people were like, oh my God, like you've changed. Like, you don't have the same, passion that you used to have in fashion. And I was like, no, I'm just studying fashion journalism at school, and I don't have the time to make content because I have essays to write and dissertations to do and documentaries to film. That's why. Yeah, so they did pay for my flight and accommodation. They did. But who knows? I probably won't get invited this year because I barely post on Instagram, and if it's still inspired by Meta, then yeah, I'm probably not going to get the invite. And yeah, so it was good while it lasted. Hopefully, I can this year, New Year's resolution, I'll start posting more reels. But yeah, what did I do my dissertation on? So my dissertation was about navigating queerness in a homophobic society. So it was talking about navigating queerness in Nigerian culture, and so it was talking about the history of queerness in it's deep because it's a dissertation. So I was talking about the history of queerness in Nigeria, mainly in my tribe's culture, so Yoruba culture. What does queerness actually mean? How did that look like in historical Yoruba culture? How did our understanding of queerness change? So talking about like colonialism and how when Christianity was exported to Nigeria, kind of these like things like the buggery laws and all these different things, and how that changed our understanding of what queerness is, how that changed the way that women and men relate, and how that relates to the fact that being homosexual is illegal in Nigeria, and how that relates to like how we relate in modern society in Nigeria today. So that was basically what my dissertation was on. So yeah, it's kind of deep, but it was really interesting because I wanted to use it as a chance to, do research into my own culture's history. So it was really fun doing that, if that makes sense. No, I didn't post my dissertation anywhere actually. I didn't. But yeah, the dissertation was hard. I read so many books, did so many interviews, spoke to so many people for my dissertation. Yeah, it was rough. All of that work, and I didn't even get a first. I got a 2-1 on my dissertation. In my degree, though, I got first class honors, but in my dissertation specifically, I didn't get a first. I got a first class in every single project I did, apart from my dissertation. I got a 2-1 on my dissertation. I was so pissed off because I worked so hard, so hard on my dissertation, and they're like, "Nope, we're gonna give you a 2-1." Yeah, if you guys want to read it, then definitely I'll see if I can post it somewhere. That's definitely a thing I can do. Oh, The Invention of Woman. That's a really good book. Yeah, I did read that. That's a really good book. So a lot of the books I read, apart from obviously, so I read a book on that was just about Christianity in Nigeria and how it was brought to Nigeria, like Ajayi Crowder and all that stuff, right? I read about, so I had a book on that. I had so many books on like just West African history in general, so many books about colonialism, so many books about, womanhood. Because also, something that's important to understand historically is that, at least in my specific culture, in Yoruba culture in Nigeria, women were actually the heads of the household, or women were the ones that were actually in control in my culture. And it wasn't until colonialism that everything got flipped on its head, and then a westernized understanding of society got forced on us. So that's why we started to follow like this very men should dominate, men are in charge type of thing. But actually, historically in my culture, women were actually in charge. So that was one of the things that I pointed out in my dissertation, that the way that men and women relate absolutely changed after colonialism. So it's just interesting how like a lot of Western understandings of things changed African society to the. It's so crazy because to the point where if you look at let's say British colonies like Nigeria, like Jamaica, these are countries that are very, very homophobic still. But the UK that forced those laws on these places is now a place that's like really tolerant on these things. It's really, really interesting to just like study. A 2-1. So the highest grade you can get degree wise is a first class, which is what I got. Then you can get a 2-1, which comes after. A 2-1 is still like you can get any job with a 2-1. Then after a 2-1 is a 2-2. A 2-2 is like you didn't do so well. Your grades weren't that good, but some people might still hire you if you have a 2-2. And then there's like anything less than a 2-2, which is basically like you went to university for vibes because having a third class degree is basically like having no degree. It just shows that you went to university for vibes, really. So that's kind of how the grading works. Yeah, so Micah said a 2-1 is like an A minus. Okay, basically. Whereas a first class is like an A plus. Yeah. But yeah, if you get less than a 2-2, genuinely you just went to university for vibes. Like you didn't you were just there just to make up the numbers. You didn't actually go there with any serious intentions. But yeah, that was also the Simone Rocha show. It was really fun going through these shows actually. Let me see if I can get some of the Vogue runway looks just so I can see some of the detail shots. We love a bit of a detail shot. But apart from that, let me know if you have any questions. I'll answer some more questions for a few minutes and then I have to try and clip the Jean-Paul Gaultier aspect from this live stream as quickly as possible before people start posting the Jean-Paul Gaultier vids and the Schiaparelli vids and the John Galliano Margiela vids. Yep, 3 hours. It is a very long live. Thank you so much for the guys that are tuning in right now. It's always really fun doing these live streams. I always forget how much I miss it when I do them. You have another reference to Jean-Paul Gaultier comb bras. Oh, what's that jewelry piece? What's that? What's that supposed to be? I have no idea what that's supposed to be, but it looks really interesting. Yeah, I know the 3 hours go by so fast. It never feels like 3 hours, although I must say that when I've been talking for too long, I start stumbling on my words because I don't think it's actually normal for someone to just be sat in their living room talking for hours and hours on end. So that's why I might say John Galliano, start tripping on my words because I'm talking too much. That's when I remember, oh, I've been talking for an hour. Yellow says it looks like a napkin ring. Napkin ring. To TV Club, because I know you said you're bummed that you didn't come earlier. On the bright side, you can watch it back. When the stream is done, you can watch it back. Do you not get a sore throat? No, I think my body has adapted to just chatting for hours without even a drink of water. I think my body has just adapted to it. So that's why I can thug it out. Which couture show was the best actually to you? Definitely Maison Margiela for sure. John Galliano for the win. Yeah, these are the shoes that I love. These ballerina, but at the same time derbies, lace ups with the heel. That's a really good shoe. I feel like that shoe is gonna do really well. Let me know what you guys think, but I think that this shoe is a hit. So much nudity in all these shows. I wonder if I've been demonetized. YouTube's like, nope, no monetization for you. Let's just see if we can speed through these detail shots. Did this season feel more edgy than usual as far as nudity? I guess so. I guess in a way it kind of did, to be fair. But I don't know, maybe because I just work in fashion, I'm so used to seeing nudity. I'm kind of like blind to it almost. Because it's so like every season there's going to be a few shows that have some form of nudity. And because I'm always going through all the shows, I just see it all the time. So it's not really, it just is what it is. You should do more Monday streams, easier to catch than on Sundays when I'm out of the house. That's interesting. Do you guys prefer me to stream on a Monday or a Sunday? What works for most of you? We can have a little live vote right now. What would you guys say you prefer? They look like Irish dancing shoes. That's a good shout. They kind of do, you know. They kind of do. Oh, some people say Monday. Some people say Sunday. Okay, we've got some Mondays. Goated end to the week. Okay, so that's why you like Sunday. Oh, there's a lot more Sundays than Mondays. Oh, do you know what it is? I think why most people probably say Sunday is most of my audience is American, but I actually like to have a life. So I can't stream when is probably the perfect time for Americans. The perfect time for Americans would be after work for Americans. So that would be, let's say, the thing is America is so big. So what does that mean? Because there's so many time like zones. But let's just say 6 p.m. New York time is like, or no, let's say 8 p.m. New York time is like 2 a.m. UK time, but I cannot stream at 2 a.m. I'll just be tired. I won't be able to like string thoughts together. So I guess on a Sunday, when I stream at 8 p.m. on a Sunday, UK time, is around afternoon time in the US, which works because it's a weekend. So people aren't at school or at work or whatever. So I guess it would make more sense for Americans to prefer Sunday. Oh, shout out! We've got some people in Europe in the house. Berlin, Spain. Venus is streaming from South Africa. Shout out to South Africa. Where from South Africa are you from? I really want to go to Johannesburg. I've never been. I really want to go. Obviously, I went to Cape Town and filmed that documentary. That was really fun. But Johannesburg is just like, I've heard good things. You should do something academic but fun, like a Fulbright. That would be kind of cool. Oh, Canada, France. Elsa's laughing my ass off. I'm in the UK. Yeah, imagine if I was streaming at like 2 a.m. on a Well, it would be a Monday. I'd be streaming because obviously it would have to be Sunday for Americans, right? That's insane. Imagine my UK viewers won't be able to watch it. So that's why I used to stream on Sundays at 8 p.m. because I feel like Sunday at 8 p.m. works for across a lot of different time zones. It's convenient for a lot of different time zones. Ah, you're in Pretoria. I know Pretoria. That's fair enough. Finding something entertaining to do on a weekday evening is tougher than a weekend. Good point. The thing I've noticed on YouTube on a Sunday also is that so many people post videos on Sundays. I don't know what it is about Sundays, but yeah, people they love to post a video on a Sunday. I've noticed. But yeah, anyway, let me know what your favorite haute couture show was of the season, and then I'm going to head out as we've just hit the 3 hour mark. And anything that is significantly longer than 3 hours, people won't watch back. They'll just look at it and be like, oh my God, 4 hour stream, I can't watch it back. Oh wow, from Kenya. Shout out to Kenya. I was there last year. I went to Kenya last year. It was really fun. It was in Nairobi. Elsa's Margiela. Margiela. We've got some Margielas. Yeah, it seems like Margiela stole the show this season, which is amazing to see because I don't think we talk about Margiela in this way. We don't get a lot of chances to talk about Margiela, even though John Galliano's work at Margiela has been good the whole time. I think maybe this specific collection just hit a nerve with people. Margiela doesn't really have, sorry, not Margiela, even though Martin Margiela himself didn't have weak collections really. John Galliano is the same. He doesn't really have weak collections, to be honest. Super consistent. Robert Woon, I'm seeing some Robert Woons. Robert Woon was really cool. We might have to talk about Robert Woon in the next stream and Alaya because I really just want to talk about Alaya. I just thought the Alaya show was really good. Pieter Mulier is doing an insane job. Galliano is an alumnus of your secondary school. What secondary school is that? I'm not sure I know what secondary school John Galliano went to. What school is that? That's interesting. In your school, did they like talk about John Galliano all the time? Is he like on the posters? Is he like on the marketing campaign for the school? Is he like on the brochures? That would be funny. Wilson's. Interesting. Interesting. That's so cool. That's so cool. You were breathing the same air as an angry John Galliano. Because I remember he talks about being like bullied in school because obviously he was different and he was gay and it wasn't really well accepted at the time when he was younger, right? So you've breathed in the raw, angry energy of John Galliano. Nope, especially after he had his incident. Oh yeah, that's true actually. Yeah, they wouldn't. They wouldn't. They wouldn't. That's a good point. The John Galliano. Actually, let's talk about this before I depart. the thing about John Galliano, about like why he was cancelled, or like what he said, obviously was egregious. And John Galliano, there are many accounts of John Galliano being abusive, not just in the sense of what we know about, like what he was cancelled for, but also behind the scenes. There's a lot of cases, right? But the thing is that we haven't heard any. When he was at Dior, he was like, he had a serious God complex. He was getting into trouble all the time, right? Since he's been at Margiela, we haven't heard a pin drop from him, like, which would give me, because I don't know, like, I don't really agree with cancellation in the sense that I feel like everyone has room to grow as a human being. Otherwise, it just reminds me of, you know, when people get celebrities tweet stuff that they tweeted when they were like 12 years old, and they're like, oh my God, like this person, as if like human beings can't change or develop or grow as humans. However, that does not excuse all the egregious things that John Galliano did. But I'd say, because to me, actions speak louder than words, right? So I'd say that his behavior after the fact definitely would suggest that he's changed. But the second that at Margiela he says some other egregious things, that would just give the sense that, okay, this person is just not going to change ever. So yeah. Cobb said his incident. I don't want to say what it is because obviously this is YouTube and the stream might get shut down when you use certain keywords. May I ask a total newbie question? I think I see patterns and commonalities among the brands in one season. Certain fabrics, cuts, vibes. Are those real and why? Or is my mind trying to find patterns? It's real and it's not real. I mean, I don't know if this still happens, but historically, Vogue had a hold on trends in fashion. So Vogue was so powerful back in the day that they would tell all the designers, okay, we're pushing a story on the new color of the year being red. So we need everyone to have red in their collection or have at least a red look so that we can predict red. And then all of you use red, and then we look like, you know, the magazine that is all-knowing and knows everything. I'm telling you, fashion is such a fake industry. But anyway, so that was kind of how, you know, they used to artificially create trends. I think now Vogue just doesn't have motion like that to do stuff like that. But so many shows happen that you can start to see parallels. Like if I was to write a trend piece, and I'm just, once again, being very transparent as a journalist, the easiest type of pieces to write as a journalist are trend pieces. The reason being, you can create a trend out of nowhere. Like I could just be like, oh, Western style is in. And then I could just start showing pictures of, you know, Daniel Roseberry, Schiaparelli, and Pharrell Williams's show. Or I could start being like, you know, long dresses are in, and I could just find 5 runway shows where they have long dresses. So you can also draw those parallels extremely easily, right? So it just depends. I think it's a bit of both. Stanley said Americana is going to be big. Exactly what I was talking about. And like WGSN also, they are in control. Well, they trend forecast, which I don't know. I don't know if they trend forecast though, because all these brands are subscribed to WGSN, and then WGSN is like, okay, this like Pantone whatever is the color of the year, and then all the designers that are subscribed to WGSN then use that Pantone color. So it's almost like an artificial trend. It's kind of just like WGSN are now the trend forecasters. So then everyone goes to WGSN for the trend forecasting, and then they do the exact same stuff, right? So that is kind of like artificial as well. And it's kind of funny how that works. It's very, very funny how that works, to be honest. But yeah, on that note, I definitely need to make food and go to bed and wake up to see another day. But I'm super appreciative of everyone that joined the live. This was really fun to do, talking about all these designers and talk about fashion, because this is what I love to do. So thank you very much for tuning in. And I'll see you guys in the next live stream, hopefully on Sunday. Fingers crossed, if I'm available and something doesn't, get in the way. But yeah, see you guys in the next live stream.